Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and this is Page Chewing Episode 5 with PL Stuart. And we have the Avengers Assemble crew here all over the world. So it's always great when we can all get together and chat. So, Zamil, you want to kick us off and tell us about yourself?
Sure, I'm Zamil Akhtar, the author of Gunmetal Gods. I live in Dubai. Yeah, that's it.
Lana, you want to go next?
I'm Lena from the booktube channel Law and Lullabies, and I'm in Australia, so it's like 9 o'clock here at the moment, but I'm originally from New Zealand. Yeah, that's me.
And Taylor?
Okay, so yeah, I'm Taylor from the booktube channel Maed Between the Pages. I live in Japan, so it is 8 p.m. here. So I'm always just an hour before Lana. So glad to be here.
And of course, the co-host of the show is Mr. P.L. Stuart.
It's a cutie. I think we're gonna have a sixth Avenger joining us in the background with Lana. Oh, he's cute. I'm PL Stewart, and I'm in Canada, so it's 7 a.m. time here. But as Steve has eloquently said, there isn't a group of people that's more worth getting up for than my 5 friends here. So thanks for having me. Honored to be here.
Of course. And so this one was just basically just an excuse to hang out. So
pretty well.
Yeah.
So for Lana and Taylor specifically, oh cutie, you must be getting tired. So I'm interested to hear how you two got started with the whole booktubing thing. You know, I'm just amazed by what you two do. I mean, you know, for Steve and I, and obviously Steve's a booktuber as well, but you know, for me, I blog, I review books, but it would be a huge stretch for me to get to the point where I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to have a YouTube channel. So, you know, like how did you guys get started doing something like that?
I have wailing in the background, so Taylor, I'll let you go first.
Okay, I was going to say, do you want to do rock, paper, scissors? But that settles it. All right. That's a good question. It's been a little while. Also, my chair is creaky, so if you hear creaking, sorry about that. But how did I get started? Well, I was kind of a lurker at first on BookTube. So the first catalyst was actually when I came to Japan, because brick and mortar stores weren't a thing here. So I was always a reader, but I always just kind of read in my own kind of world. My friends in real life weren't really readers, but I had access to books wherever I wanted. And then when I came here, English books, there's not a market for them at all. And so I found myself kind of like this hole in my life that I didn't expect. So I don't remember what review I searched, but I searched a review and someone came up and I was like, wait a minute. I think it was like Emma Books. I think she was still really, really big, but a review of a book came up and I was like, this exists. And then I found out about Goodreads, and then there was another this exists moment. So I was a lurker for quite a few years, just watched, didn't comment and things like that. And then I found that I would watch videos and yet it would leave me with something that I wanted to say. And I don't really like texting or typing. I'm more of like a verbal person. So I was like, well, if I'm going to say these things, I think it would be better to just create a platform where I can say what I want to say. So I ended up, you know, the first booktube video I created was on my phone, terrible lighting, sitting in front of like 5 books. And I was like, I like reading. And then I just kind of went from there. So I was also, I started during a pandemic, so the panini. So there were a lot of other people starting at the same time. And so I was really thankful that all of us wanted a community. So we all kind of followed each other. And it was I think I was able to create a community or friends quicker than you usually could, because all of us were starting at the same time. So that really helped me as well. But just kind of went from there. Yeah. Are you good to go, Lana? Or do you still need to keep it on mute?
She's still kind of whinging, but now it's about something different. But yeah, so I was very much like Taylor. I started out as a lurker, following quite big channels, like Murphy and Emma's Books as well, I think. And then, like, sort of just before I started, I was also watching Chloe's books as well. And because she's that's like the first sort of Australian booktuber that I saw. And I was like, oh, people are doing it on this side of the world. And so, but I was much the same. I was just like, I kind of wanted to like throw in my 5 cents. But again, these are massive channels that have like tens of thousands of followers. And I didn't feel like that was sort of my place. But when the pandemic hit, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go out and buy like 20 books and then just see whatever's happening. Because again, it was the start of the pandemic. Everyone's going crazy. There was no pasta, no toilet paper in any of the shopping grocery stores. And the only people that I really know in my real life that read was my mom and my sister, but they read more. My sister reads like spiritual, non-fiction-y stuff, and my mom reads like historical romance and PNR, and that's really about it. And I was like, no, I want to like talk about fantasy and sci-fi and thrillers. And so I just decided that one day I would do a first video and see how it went. And I didn't even have books in my background. I was sitting in my living room, like in front of the computer, and my lounge was just behind me. It was horrible. It's not much better now. I need another bookshelf. But yeah, so that's how I started. And then through that, again, I found a community. Sorry, excuse me. And yeah, I found so many more smaller booktube channels and made fast friends with them. And I was like, oh my goodness, there is a whole nother side of booktube that I didn't even know about when I was just lurking, because I only ever saw big channels referring to other big channels. So that's all I knew. But as soon as I posted something as a small channel, I had so many more other small channels be like, hey, loved your video. So great to have you in the community. And I was just like, oh, who are these people? I want to be friends. And I have made so many good relationships and friendships through this community. It's been amazing. I recently, about 3 days ago, it was my 2-year anniversary being on BookTube. So that was exciting. I still haven't done anything for it. Whoops. But yeah, it's been amazing. If it wasn't for the community, I honestly wouldn't be here. I've thought so many times about, like, I'm always on the cusp of like, do I want to create content or do I want to read for that content? And reading more often than not wins out. So there have been so many times where I'm like, oh, should I just stop the channel and just go back to lurking and commenting and all of that sort of thing. So if it wasn't for the community, I wouldn't still be here.
You guys saw my reactions while she was talking, but I just want to second the idea that like small channels, that's where it's at for me as well. Like, not that big channels aren't important. They're very important to get the word out. And I'm sure they have their own small community that they talk to outside of there. But like when it comes to being inspired to continue making content, especially when it's reading, which takes time. Like, so you have to take time to read in order to create the content. It can feel like a lot. But then if you post a video, and I'm sure, you know, well, Steve, you got all of us together, so you see the fruits of your labors often. But, you know, when someone comments and says, that's exactly what I was thinking, or even just something small as like, this video made me smile. I'm like, well, okay, well now I can't stop, so those interactions, the small things, I just wanted to second that from Lana.
So
100%.
what is more of a motivating factor when it comes to content? Is it that you want to read books that you yourself want to talk about, or is it more like I want to read the books that everyone else is talking about in order to jump into the wider conversation? What is more of a more of a motivator?
So for me, originally, it was I started from the back burner, so I was playing catch up with all these popular books that are on BookTube. I got to the point where I was like, I'm never going to catch up with all of these books. And by the time I post a review with my like dodgy lack of lighting and like low budget production, I was like, no one's going to watch this. I'm kind of just wasting the time. And if I'm not 100% passionate about it, like I'm not a great speaker anyway. Like my editing takes so long because of the pauses and the ums and the like weird goofy facials that I do. But I found the indie community. Because I started off, I've always read romance. Like that's how I got into, like when I got back into reading as an adult, it was through romance. And a lot of romance, especially PNR, are all indie. Like a lot of them are indie authors. So from there, I was just like, are there fantasy indie authors? And so that's when I started looking for that. And then I was just like, oh my goodness. And my mind was just blown. Yeah. And so that's what my channel mostly, where I want my channel to mostly focus. Like I've recently found that I like creating trailers for indies that don't have trailers. Like again, I'm like just learning as I go. I edit with Filmora and like free stock videos. So there's like a massive limit to what I can do, but I like, it's fun. And other than buying books, it's like my way of saying, thanks, I really loved your book. Like, so that's sort of where my focus is this year, is doing that and reviewing indie stuff. For the traditional stuff, I'm like, thousands of other people have done it. I don't really care to do that. I'll just do it on Goodreads and Amazon, and there you go, mate. So
yeah, I kind of have a similar origin story in like the catch-up thing. So when I discovered BookTube, like I said, I was reading in kind of my own sphere. I didn't have other people that read in my life, so I kind of read what caught my eye. But then I saw everyone talking about the same series and things like that. And so I did try to play catch up for a while, but I also had an aha moment, which was, I'm already going to like dig my own grave here, but the Raven Boys series. So that is huge. And I'm so happy for you if you love that. But I read that book and I was like, what the hell is everyone talking about? Like, I don't understand. And so I really pushed myself through the first book. And then I went to the library and got the second book because I don't know what possessed me. I got 10 pages into it and I was like, why am I doing this? What is the reason that I'm spending my time doing this? And I realized it was just because I had FOMO, basically. And so that was my aha moment where I realized I don't have an issue with traditional publishing at all. You can see behind me, I have plenty of traditionally published books, but I'm only going to read the ones that interest me. So in the beginning, the motivation was more like to read what others are reading. And that's still part of it in the sense like you want to be part of the culture, like what people are talking about. Like just before this, I actually filmed a rant review for the second Crescent City book. So spoilers for what's coming soon, but that's, can't get bigger than that. But I want to credit Lana for this actually, because she is the one who introduced me to indie through her readathon that she does. So like I knew it existed, but I didn't like no, and so it was through that readathon that, well, first of all, Lana and I have become friends that we have become, but I discovered Zamil's book and, PL Stuart, your book. Like, so I think recently, in this year specifically, I've seen a shift more towards indie because I want to kind of get the word out more. And Steve is actually a big part of that too, because you always talk about books that I've had on my radar, but I've pushed back, but then I hear you talk about them and I'm like, I think I don't need to push that back anymore. So I'm feeling a shift currently in what my motivation is. But my theory is that some of that shift comes from becoming comfortable with your channel. Because anyone who's first starting out, I don't think they know what they want to do yet. They see what's big and they're like, well, that's big, so why don't I try that? Or, oh, I didn't like that, so let me try that. So it's just my theory. But I feel like when you first start a booktube channel, you don't really know what you want yet. But after you've had it for a year or two, then you're kind of like, oh, okay, this is something I enjoy. This is a niche I want to focus on. So I'm feeling that shift currently. And, so I think it's a work in progress. But yeah, I would say it's a mix. To summarize, it's a mix, the motivation.
Yeah, and wow, that's fascinating. And I guess for me, I know for Zamil and I, again, we, booktubers and bloggers, that's what, they're the people that get our books out there. And we're so grateful for them. And it's fascinating to hear how you two got started. It's not all that dissimilar in some ways to writing. I mean, everyone has a different path to get there, but you kind of, you feel like you're fumbling around at first, but there's something inside you that's saying, I need to do this. And that's sounds very similar to what Lan and Taylor are talking about. So I funny enough, I haven't asked Steve this. I guess, so Steve, to put you on the spot, how did you get started? How did you come to be Steve Talks Books?
I don't know. Well, I used to read lots of comics, like lots of indie comics, and mostly like horror, and I didn't read the superhero stuff. I always read the stuff that was different, like the stuff that most people didn't know about, or just kind of like the under the radar stuff that you can only find in certain places, certain CD places. You have, that you have to knock on the door a certain amount of times, and the sled opens, and there's a keyword, and you have to know the right word. But so then our family wanted to get Kindles, so we started looking at reviews for Kindles and what kind of Kindle should we get or whatever. And I ran into Mike's book reviews. Sorry, it's early. And I didn't know that there was a thing people got on and talked about books and literature. And I had been wanting to get it more into novels and different types of books. So I thought, well, this is cool. So I started watching his channel. And then of course you find the other big channels like Lana and Taylor had mentioned. So I just kind of felt like I was missing out. And I started a channel not knowing. I still don't know what I'm doing, but I knew even less then. And I think it's and of course I wanted to, you hear about these big franchises, and so that, well, I'll try these books that everyone's talking about. And then I try like the first law, which is fine. It's it's good and everything, but well, it's fine, but I mean, I don't know. Everyone's talked about it. So what am I going to say that 1,000 other people haven't already said? What am I going to say about this that someone's going to find interesting? And so I've always loved like the indie scene. To know about something before everyone else does is kind of like a fun thing to do. And the most creative stuff you find is the indie stuff. I think it's true for most things. So and just to echo what Taylor and Lana had said about that too, is I think you start to get comfortable and you start to say, oh, this is just what I do. This is what I enjoy. Reading takes time, and you spend a lot of time reading. So if I'm going to spend my time reading, I'm going to read what I want to read and talk about what I enjoy. And if I find an audience, that's cool. But if not, then I'm not going to waste my time on books I don't enjoy just so I can keep up with the crowd. I want to read what I want to read, and I'm going to find stuff I love, and I'll tell people about it. But it does come with just getting comfortable and just saying, this is just what I do. This is what I enjoy. This is how I want to spend my time.
I do want to throw a question out following that, because I think Lana, myself, and Steve have all expressed like we do this for internal reasons, like there's something we want to do. And I feel like, PL and Zamil, you probably have the same feeling, right? For writing, there's something, like you said, that makes you want to do it. But we cannot deny that numbers are a thing, right? So it can feel like, we've talked about this, I think, in previous chats, like screaming into the void, especially if you have like a small channel or an indie book, right? So my question for you guys is, I think everyone has hard days. Like Anan talked about, maybe deleting her channel and just focusing on the reading part, right? So my question to you guys is, like, when you have bad days, or like you put a video for, maybe for the booktube aspect, or maybe for you guys a short story or something that you put your heart into and you're really proud of it, but it's not getting feedback, or, you know, YouTube is specifically lets you know when your current video is not doing as good as others. Like, it puts it in you can't avoid it. There's like red everywhere, down arrows, like, you know, it just lets you know this is not doing well. So I think people would be lying if they say they don't struggle with that. So my question is for you guys, when you have those moments, if you put your heart into something and just isn't hitting right with the world, essentially, what do you guys do to like help with that?
I'll let Zamil answer that first.
Yeah, that's a tough one. We all have expectations, and I think expectations vary wildly. So I might be sitting there one day thinking, "Oh, this is going to be a bestseller. I'm going to be Brandon Sanderson once I put this thing out." And then the next day I'll be like, "Man, no one is going to read this trash." You know, uh, I'll be lucky if like 5 people like this novel. So I flit between these two states, and sometimes I'm in between as well. Um, and it's very, very, when you write something, to this day, I've never been sure what the reaction is going to be. Whether it's a short story, a novel, a novella, I have no idea whether people are going to love this or hate it, because I myself, as the writer, I can't judge the quality of my own work. It's literally impossible. Like, I have no clue if this book is good or not. Like the book I'm writing right now, I've read it maybe 30 times, and I still have no idea if this is total trash or like a magnum opus to rival, Michelangelo. So when you actually publish what you've written and you put it out there, it's absolutely, nerve wracking, and you're sitting there and you're waiting for the first reviews to come in, for the first feedback, for anyone to just say, "Yeah, that was pretty good. I like that. That was nice. 5 stars." You're waiting for that. Um, and when if it doesn't come, if it doesn't happen, if the end result is to the lower end of your expectation, then frankly, it's disappointing and it hurts. And you know you've put in so much effort and so much heart into that, and it feels like it's not being reciprocated. You're not getting back what you put in. It's a difficult thing, and every creative has to deal with that feeling and learn how to overcome that feeling so they can keep creating. And that's absolutely one of the biggest challenges. And I think it's just something that it hurts. You'll mourn the loss of your dream in a sense. And then you'll move on and you'll start writing again, and you'll start looking toward the future, to the next piece. And I think the key is not to remain stuck on that failure, if you want to call it that, not to remain stuck on that, and to look toward the next project, um, and be hopeful, basically.
Very well said, Zamil. I think for writers, to answer Taylor's question, I think we're all the same here, writers, booktubers, in that the problem with what we do is that so much of it relies on validation, and we decide inside we have this thing bursting to get out of us that makes us want to create a booktube channel, or makes us want to write a book. And we do it because we think we have something to say that other people would like to hear. We do it because we feel that we need to say it just for ourselves. And you're doing this thing that is partly for yourself and partly because you feel other people could perhaps benefit from it or would like to hear. And then you don't get the reaction that you want. And that's hard, because then you ultimately have to decide, well, why am I really doing this? And that's where I think potentially the downside, the depression or the sadness can come in. And I know for me personally, my thing is always I'm less upset about a negative review than I am about somebody who, in my mind, didn't get the book. And that for me is probably the thing that really gets me down. I've had really positive reviews where I feel that, and this is again the struggle where you write something, you put it out there, and we as writers, we've talked about this. I think Steve and I were talking about this with Mark Timoney and Thomas in the podcast on Saturday, that you write this book and you have accountability for what you write. But once it's out there, it belongs to the reader, and it's the reader's interpretations. And like Zamil said, it has nothing to do with you anymore. Almost, it's like you're this detached, disembodied thing that wrote this book, and someone else decides what your book is about, whether it's good or not. And those are my bad days when someone may say, okay, it was a great book and interesting battle scenes, a great role playing, blah blah, but they missed, or at least didn't speak about. Perhaps they didn't miss it, but they didn't address the things that I felt were really important with the book, which was addressing the societal ills and the things that really drive me to write. Talking about homophobia and racism, colonialism, and all these things, and I've had to take a step back and keep reminding myself that, well, if someone thought positive of your book, thought your prose was great, or your battle scenes are great, or your world building is great, isn't that enough? Like, isn't that enough that they even read the book? Because it's a privilege that they spent their hard-earned time and money, on buying the book and reading it. But then I may feel frustrated because, well, they didn't. I have to remind myself, but it's not up to me. It's up to them what they get out of the book, and it's up to them to like the book to the degree that they like it, for the reasons they like it or not like it, and that's hard. And I'm still getting used to it. It's still really, I'm still coping with that, and maybe one day it won't matter, but right now I think it really does. And quickly, I just want to say the second part. For all of us, I think we're at this stage where you guys talked about big booktube channels, and I think Zamil, not to speak for Zamil, but I think he'll say we're looking at big authors. You never feel that you're where you should be in terms of your recognition and how widespread I guess acclaim is of your book, and that's great because it keeps you hungry, it keeps you hustling for continuous improvement. But I just think, well, I'm still such a nobody in the writing game, right? And I'm still so insignificant, and but then I remind myself that but I remember where I was, which was even more insignificant, and that there's people that I talk to is like, man, I would kill for your following and your reviews, and I'm like, me? You know what I mean? And I'm no, and I'm looking at the John Gwynns of the world, and the Brandon Sandersons, and the Evan Winters, and the Ben Galleys, and the Michael Fletchers. I'm going, like I'll never be what they are, right? And they're great people, but if you talk to them, they cope with the exact same thing. So it's this. I think we all, writers, booktubers, we all have this imposter syndrome that we're coping with, right? That it can be a real struggle. So
just want to catch up on a couple of comments really quick. Pax is at work but wanted to pop in and say hello. Thanks, Pax, for dropping in. Of course, our friend Andres is here. Or I was going to say good morning, but it may not be morning where you are. Author Joseph Caro is here. Yes, I am up early. It's 5:30 but it is worth it. So Hobbit Hole Books is here. Hey, Hobbit Hole Books. And Chade is here. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. And Andres says, I notice I'm more interested in what some of the booktubers you mentioned have to say than reviewers at the New York Times, perhaps because they're more open to genre literature. And Raul is coming off his shift. I think he's still working nights. It's bedtime for him, but I wanted to say hello. Joseph says, my problem is I'm a glutton for punishment. It's early. So if I start a book, I have to finish it. And let's see. when I'm reading a book doesn't grab my interest and it slows me down, I put it aside for later. Maybe I'm not ready for it. Maybe it's the right puzzle piece 2 months later. This is an interesting one that I want to hear all of your opinions on DNFing books, or when do you set a book down? Don't all go at once.
When do I? So I used to be the same as Andreas here. I always point the wrong way. This is just going to be my brand. I'm going to do this instead. But I always do, or used to do, the same thing, where I was like, well, if I've started it and I've invested 2 days into reading this book, I'm going to finish it, you know? And it was no one telling me to do that besides myself. So why did I decide to do it? I would say I have a desire. I'm a completionist. So I like to just finish what I start. And so this is the same thing with sports, with weightlifting, with anything in my life. So I think that it has its place, but it became toxic for me, especially once I had a channel. Because, well, the Raven Boys is an example where I was like really pushing myself to finish something. So when it comes to actually fully DNFing and saying I'm not going to pick this up again and then putting it down for now, I know this isn't scientific, but it's a vibe. It's just a vibe. Like when you're reading the book and you're like, I feel like I'm not clicking with this book. It's not the book's fault. If you get that vibe, then I'll put it aside. But if I have specific issues with the book, like this plot is driving me crazy, or I'm not meshing with the characters, and I know what my issue is, that issue is probably not going to change when I pick it back up. So it's more like if I have a nebulous issue with a book, then I'll put it down for later. But if I have a specific thing where this just isn't matching me, this isn't what I enjoy reading, then I'll actually put it down as a DNF. So, but that's a new development, I think, in the last year, because before that, I would make myself finish a book. And honestly, the negative consequences of that are not worth it, because I would end up hating the book more than I would have if I just put it down. And it leads to, you know, more negative feelings towards it than maybe are warranted, because I decided to push myself through it. So when I realized that I was creating more negative feelings by pushing through, that's when I decided to change my view and say, okay, maybe this just isn't for me. So I think that it's developed over the years, especially having a channel.
For me, I used to be like that. I used to push myself through reading when I first started, because prior to that, I had no problems being like, oh, this isn't for me, or it's not for me right now, and just put it aside. Maybe pick it up later, but maybe not. But when I started BookTube, that's when I was like, oh, I need to finish this. And it is only this year that I've started actually DNFing instead of just putting things aside. But also in saying that, I do know what I like. So that does help, knowing yourself as a reader. But yeah, I find it a lot easier to DNF. And when it does come to reviews, I find that it's easier for me to say why a book wasn't for me and why I didn't like it than it is for me to say why I loved a book. Weird as that is, I find it so much easier to say this book wasn't for me because of this. And when I love a book, I'm just like, it's amazing.
I just want to add to that. It's just me screaming when I love a book. Like I have to really sit in and think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah. I just don't anymore. I'm quite happy to DNF. Or if it is something that isn't for me, I'm happy to DNF. But if it's something that's like triggered me when it wouldn't usually trigger me, then I'll put it down and come back to it. Like Baker's, what's it called? The first one in that trilogy. I don't know, but it got to a point, and I was just like, oh, this is too dark for me right now. Like I just can't do it right now.
Is that R. Scott Baker? Is that R. Scott Baker? Okay.
The darkness of something. It got to a point in that book where I was just like, I need to put this down and pick it up later. that happened last year. I was just like, I just can't do this right now. I can't do it. And so that was like also a new thing for me to notice that and put a book down. But yeah, it all depends on the book, but usually I'm pretty good at DNFing nowadays.
I have a question for the authors here. Shadia says, I would like to buy more indie books, and I do for Dutch authors, but I have noticed that a lot of indie books are only available in my country through Amazon, and I don't use Amazon. And I wondered, Zamil and PL, if you can help us with this one, because I know Lana experiences this in Australia. Not, it's harder to get books; they're more expensive. How does it all work in a nutshell? That, just how does that whole system work?
Well, yeah, it's funny. It's just so funny you said that. I actually had a Goodreads message from a reader in Australia that was asking me about Amazon and getting my book on Amazon and outside of Amazon. And I think I've spoken about this with Steve privately and on podcasts, and no disrespect to Amazon, but I am, as an indie writer, I am extremely frustrated by some of the big gatekeepers that we deal with. Traditionally published writers, my traditionally published writer friends deal with gatekeepers, but I think Zamil, and I can't wait to hear what Zamil has to say, but I think for we indie authors, a lot of us feel completely hamstrung by Amazon. I am fortunate in that I am self-published, assist published, so I have an indie press that has their own bookstore that releases my book, so you can buy it there exclusively if you want it. You can buy it in any format there, and they also produce my audiobook for the first book. And because I'm on the wider Ingram network, so that distribution network allows you to go with things like Barnes and Nobles and BookBub and all these other worldwide platforms. But when it comes to Amazon specifically, Amazon publishes something like, I think it's 60 or 70% of the world's books, and soon they'll probably publish 100%. That's my theory. I feel bad in saying this, but to be honest with you, there's really no way around Amazon as an indie writer if you want to get the widespread readership, because and for a lot of people, until you publish on Amazon, you're not published even. So I feel like, and it's becoming that way slowly but surely as physical bookstores, as the amount of physical bookstores actually shrink, and that it's going to be harder and harder to purchase a book if it's not on Amazon. And I guess the positives, of course, are Amazon's distribution, so widespread, and the scope of their distribution. But yeah, I mean, as well, there's Amazon has all of its affiliates and subsidiaries, so it's not just one clearing bank. There's Amazon US, there's Amazon UK, there's Amazon Australia, there's Amazon Canada. So, and there's times when you can get a book on one of those platforms and you can't get it on the other 5 or 6. And I'll be honest with you, as much as or as little as I know about Amazon, I'm still figuring it out. And I think most authors are in the same boat, that we spend a big part of what we do as authors is navigating Amazon. And if you're going to put your book, having a book sale, and there's so many times when Amazon will discount your book and you have no control of it, or they'll bundle your books, and so I find it frustrating. It's a necessary evil, I guess. But I say, for me, if you just buying books, for me personally, my books, I sell author signed copies. You can email me directly. I'll email them all over the world. I charge shipping, obviously, and that's, I do that through my website. You can buy my books on my indie Friesen Press, on the Friesen Press bookstore all over the world. And of course, you can buy it on Barnes and Nobles or BookBub, or thanks to Ingram, any of those other platforms. But mainly, the vast preponderance of people buy my book through Amazon, because Amazon, is where most people can get my book. So, anyways, I'll let Zamil take over. I don't want to turn it into an Amazon rant. It's not quite fair. So.
Yeah, as authors, it's in our interest to offer our books as widely as possible to as many retailers as possible. However, Amazon is aware of this, and they have a counter to this where they want us to be exclusive to Amazon, and then they offer us things like inclusion into Kindle Unlimited. They offer us higher royalty rates, and they offer us all these extras for being exclusive to them. And all self-published authors have to weigh whether these extras are worth it or not. And the majority of fantasy authors that I know decide just to go exclusively with Amazon, because Amazon is just such a massive, basically a monopoly, more or less, over the book market. And that includes the ebook format. It includes the audiobook format. Now, with paperbacks, as a self-published author, you can make them available, even if you're exclusive to Amazon with ebooks and audiobooks. You can make the paperbacks available on Barnes and Nobles and on your own website and anywhere else that you want to make it available. So that is actually the only option that Amazon exclusive authors have. However, there is the added burden of having to buy an ISBN, for example, because Amazon provides you a free ISBN. So now you have to buy your own ISBN, and that costs a couple $100s. Then there's the added burden of having to reformat your book for Ingram, for example, reformat the cover, reformat the interior design for that channel. And so as an author, you have to ask yourself, is it worth it to do this? Is the cost worth it in order to gain that small percent of readers that will order my paperback from Barnes and Noble or wherever else? Because Barnes and Noble doesn't mean our book is appearing in stores. It just means our book is on the website. So how are they going to discover our book? Probably won't be very discoverable. So basically, we're doing this so that people who don't like Amazon or don't want to support Amazon or order from there have an option to order it elsewhere. So me personally, I haven't even taken that step yet because I haven't heard too many people express to me that. I actually haven't heard anyone say that, can I get your book off of Amazon? Because I will refuse to use Amazon. Otherwise, I just say just get it from Amazon because that's the only place it's currently available. Now, in the future, I probably will make my books available, at least in paperback format, elsewhere. But that's an undertaking that I would have to do, and it takes time and resources and money. So, that's just the unfortunate way self-publishing is set up right now.
Yeah, and I just want to add, for example, so the biggest book distributor in Canada, physical bookstore, is Chapters Indigo. So I had to basically sell myself to Chapters Indigo and say, hey, I would like you to carry my book essentially on consignment. And, of course, I'm a nobody. So when I did convince them, they agreed to take it in limited stores. Chapters Indigo has hundreds of stores over Canada. So they put it in essentially a regional group in my area. And then, I had to hope that it sold well enough so that the second book could be put there. So now, thankfully, it sold well enough that, they are going to put the second book in Chapters Indigo. Zamil, I'm not sure if you put your book in Broken Binding. I think you have. Broken Binding, no? Okay, so Broken Binding is a very popular store, physical, online bookstore in the UK. A lot of the indie authors have gotten their books in there, and of course you have to, go out and approach these stores and do that. So it's, as an indie, you're always trying to find a platform and someone who will accept you, you know, other than Amazon for a lot of us, because as Emil said, you know, I mean, for example, the thing going on right now with Amazon with, you know, them allowing customers to return, you know, ebooks, it's just like, that's the stuff that drives us crazy, I think, right? As indie authors, that we have zero control over that, right? You know, and in terms of royalties, you know, for example, from my independent book publisher, if you buy a book on Freeze and Press, a $35-ish soft cover book, I'll get about $11 in royalties, right, from that sale. On that same book from Amazon, I get about $2. So, you know, that's the disparity between you know, the royalties, for example, right? So, but again, with Amazon, you have this, you know, huge, humongous scope and reach in terms of people all over the world being able to buy your book. And while the royalties are it's certainly disproportionately, you know, disadvantageous to the writer, then you're looking at the whole volume thing, right? And the awareness of, because you're on Amazon, then more people potentially would buy your book, and that would down the road increase sales. And, you know, that's what you're hoping for, right? But you know, again, there's a lack of control with Amazon. You know, they do what they want to do. If they want to bundle your audiobook for free with some other book for the next 10 months, you have zero control over that. That's up to Amazon. You know, yeah, it's if they want, yeah, you literally have zero control.
Excuse me?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
You have zero control over what Amazon does in terms of, they might decide they're going to run an ad on your book. You know, normally the way Amazon works is that, you know, typically you have to have a certain amount of reviews till they automatically start marketing your book. But they may decide, well, this book may have potential, we're going to flag it, and we decide to, you know, we're going to run an ad on it. And that's great. You wouldn't know about it until like someone messages, hey, you do your books, there's an ad on John Kingdom on Amazon. Is there really? I said, I didn't think I had enough reviews for that. But it's all under control to the positive or negative. And that's the problem with dealing with these mega, as Zamil said, these big monopolies that, you know, they have billions and billions of dollars and unchecked power, essentially, to do what they want to do with your intellectual property. You know, that's the way it is, right? So
this is so fascinating to me as a reader, because especially a reader who doesn't have like English books at my fingertips. So I thought I did something when I discovered Book Depository, but I did not do something, because that is also Amazon, right? As most people know, as I have since discovered. So it's such a fascinating conversation, because I find myself, I understand when people refuse, you know, to deal with Amazon. I really do. But there are, if you're in a situation, and I'm one of those, but there are various number of situations that may, you know, necessitate this. But for me, like, I can't get books that I want if it's not through Amazon. I just can't. Like, it's not a thing that I can do. And when it comes to indie, I bought Kindle Unlimited for the indie books. So, but I didn't know that was part of like a exclusivity demand. I wasn't aware of that either. But that's something, like when I bought Kindle Unlimited as a reader, when I bought the subscription for it, I was like, oh my God, all these books that I want, they're all here, right? So it was something that was joyous to me. But it's really interesting to hear that what you guys have to give up to be able to have that, you know, accessibility. So it's not that I assumed it was all, you know, rainbows and butterflies on your side, but I didn't realize exactly how strict that it could be. But also from a reader's perspective, and it sucks to say it, and maybe I'll regret this on the internet in the future, but I need Amazon right now. Like, I just do, in order to continue this hobby. So I think this is a really interesting conversation full of nuance.
I can give a counter perspective as well, because I don't want people to leave this conversation too negative and too soured on Amazon, because the indie marketplace didn't exist until Amazon created it. They're the ones who made indie authors discoverable in the first place. Prior to this, we were basically, trying to sell books like out of our garage, in the mall to your like neighbor, or that was what indie publishing was. Uh, Amazon made indie authors as discoverable as trad published authors. So they would put the indie books next to the trad books in their store, and that gave them equal weight in terms of discoverability. And this is still the case with the Amazon store. And it's still not the case with things like Barnes and Noble, or at least not to the same extent with things like Barnes and Noble, Apple, Google Books. They don't promote indies as much as Amazon does. Now, I'm not saying this because Amazon is some virtuous, a company. They did it because they recognized there was potential to make money themselves from indie books, and they were 100% correct. Because you have indie books that are hitting the #1 spot on Amazon regularly across different genres, and Amazon recognized this potential and they mined it for what it was worth. So right now we're kind of in a situation where Amazon is trying to mine us more and more to our detriment. So it started pretty good, where the deal was much more fair, and slowly it's getting worse as they, now they're kind of forcing indie authors to use their advertising system in order to get discovered. They're kind of, they've taken away some ways to get discovered organically. So now you have to pay them to advertise to get the same level of discoverability. So this is kind of the problem with the whole situation. And it's all because Amazon is a monopoly and they're the only ones really pushing indie books as hard as they are. So, I mean, it would benefit all indie authors if Apple, Google Books, Barnes and Nobles, if they kind of did the same thing and tried to push indie authors more. But the thing is, they're not quite doing that. They're still mostly reliant on traditional published books. So that's kind of the state that we're in. And it is a struggle. And, we don't know where it's going to go. We don't know what the market will look like in 5 years, but the trend hasn't been great.
Yeah, and to echo what Zamil is saying, so we have indie authors, mega indie authors like the Will Whites of the world and the E. Rains, who, Will Wright's a New York Times bestseller as an indie author, right? And so obviously it behooves Amazon to push his books over a lot of traditionally published authors that don't nearly sell as well. The issue with the industry right now, and Zamil aptly put, is that Amazon has a monopoly now on not only traditionally published books but indie books, and indie authors feel extremely, beholden to Amazon. And while that's great for our exposure, what's happened is that it almost also pits us against traditionally published books even more than ever before, and which is bad because I think most of us would agree that in the past there was this perception of indie books as being of lesser quality and not in the same stratosphere as traditionally published books in terms of the editing and the reading and the cover, etc. Now I think that's really it's really that gap, the perception of the gap is really disappearing. And I think a lot of and as booktubers you would answer this best, that I think you'd be hard pressed to see the difference between an indie book and if you just picked it up. If you didn't know that Orbit published this, these days you wouldn't know that it wasn't traditionally published, right? Because of the quality, right? But that said, and Steve and I've talked about this with Steve and I think all of you in another podcast, that Amazon is so powerful that if they so choose, and if U.S. antitrust laws didn't stop them, they could essentially buy what's left of traditional publishing. They could just buy it, and that would be, like us buying a car, right? Like it wouldn't be that expensive. And if they did that, then it becomes, okay, what is publishing going to look like? And that's what scares me, because right now it is getting harder and harder and harder to get a traditional book deal if that's what you want, because what's left of big five publishing, they want a sure thing essentially. So if you're not an ex-president and you're not a movie star and you're not already a really established author like the Brandon Sandersons of the world, you know, how are you going to get that big book deal that's going to launch your career? And even if you get it, most traditionally published books don't earn out. They don't get their contracts renewed, and they unfortunately, a lot of those authors disappear in as much as indie authors, a lot of them disappear. So I am concerned about where the industry is going, specifically because of Amazon, because they have the financial clout to really just totally change the game on that. And they could essentially buy out what's left of traditional publishing and turn the industry into their plaything. You know, so I don't know where it's going. I don't know if that's good or bad for us. You know, people like myself and Zamil, I think we just keep trying to write our books and hope that, you know, we can gain enough of a readership that, you know, when you're never going to be immune to to what the industry does from a business perspective, but you just hope that, you know, your book is out there enough so that people will keep reading it regardless of the medium through which it's published. So,
you know, this could just be a pipe dream out of nowhere, but like, has everyone ever created or thought about like an indie subscription box? Like, is that a thing that could be, just because, well, I recently did a video, like a discussion style video on my channel where I talked about book buying habits. And, you know, consumerism is a conversation we have in the booktube sphere quite a bit. So it wasn't really touching on the consumerism aspect. It was more, what do you prefer to read and why? And I mentioned in that video that subscription boxes haven't really been a thing for me because I'm not a fan of like knickknacks and like small things. But when it comes to purchasing like a special edition or maybe otherwise unavailable physical edition of a book, I'm 100% for that. But almost all, I just had this kind of light bulb moment while you were talking. Almost all of those are traditionally published books. So I wonder, does it exist or has it ever been thought of, or is it even possible to do just like an exclusive, not, it doesn't have to be exclusive, that's dramatic, but a version of, you know, a self-published book like monthly? Because when it came to, you know, Governmental Gods even, I read that through Kindle Unlimited. But just my reading habits is if I love a book, I buy it physically, even though I have it as an ebook, which is redundant, but it's what I do. So, you know, I like to have the physical book. And I realized through the comments on that video that a lot of people feel the same. Like a lot of readers will purchase a physical copy after knowing they love a book because they want to be able to show it. So like a subscription, like a physical subscription box of indie books would be really popular, I think. I have no idea what the implications of that are or what publishing houses would have to be involved, but I'm there and I know a lot of readers who would be there for that.
Isn't Broken Binding doing something similar, although it's not just indie books, it's also trad books in their subscription box?
yeah, I think that,
I just subscribed to that actually. And
Okay.
I'll show you guys in a minute the state of this box when it arrived to my house. I don't know if it was Japanese shipping or UK shipping. Someone stomped on my book, I swear to God.
oh
But
no,
it came in with the spine a little bit twisted. But
oh,
I think I can fix it. But
oh.
the disrespect. But my point is that, yeah, I'm part of that. And you're exactly right. And that's why I subscribed, because it is just a book. And that's what kind of inspired my current thoughts if it was just indie published books. Like if they did an indie version of that, specifically indie, would be amazing. But they're doing First Law right now. So
Yeah.
That's a brilliant idea, Taylor. That's a brilliant idea. It's a brilliant idea that I think is feasible. I just, you know, right now, I'd mentioned before about, you know, for me as indie having to, you know, beg on my knees to a major bookstore to stock my books. I wonder if there was an indie subscription, you would almost have to be funded independently, I think, of the big five. I think you would need, you know, a white knight type. You would need someone to, you know, essentially like it'd have to be crowdfunded. It would have to be outside, I think, of traditional publishing, because there's no vested interest in traditional publishers to promote indie books. We live in a world where, 90% of the literary awards indie writers are excluded from in the world. 90% of the the major advertising, it has nothing to do with indies. It's all traditional. If you're not traditionally published, if you don't have an agent, you're excluded from so much. So I don't know if, like, two of the major reviewers, probably, I guess, well, certainly United States and the world, Kirkus Reviews and Clarion. And Clarion is supposed to be an indie only really review shop. Even them, like, I think there's still that. I think globally there's still that perception about indie books being lesser, and I don't know if you would have all the important literary players behind it. It is a brilliant that is a brilliant idea that you come up with. I'm just wondering who. Like, I can't see, the imprints of the Big Five going, yeah, you know what, we're gonna, because they're already struggling to get their own trad writers books out there. But it is a brilliant idea. I'd love to see it happen. So, yeah, it is a brilliant idea, though. It's fascinating.
That's kind of why I put the question out there, because I don't have a who either. I really don't, but it would just be, I know Steve raised his hand, Alana would raise her hand. Like, there would be absolutely a larger market than I think people realize for that, if there was a who,
I think this kind of thing could be done on Kickstarter, because Brandon Sanderson's Kickstarter was pretty similar. It was a subscription box. And the success of the Kickstarter would depend a lot on which books are in the subscription box and the clout and the following of those authors. Because a lot of authors do Kickstarters now, and they do them, a lot of indie authors, I should say, and they do them because you make more money from these Kickstarters than you do just publishing the book on Amazon. However, you do have to have a threshold of following. So, like Will White, during the time Brandon Sanderson was doing his Kickstarter, Will White did one, and I think he raised like almost $1 million from his Kickstarter. And a few other authors that I know, Derek Allen Sidaway, AC Cobble, a bunch of these guys did Kickstarters, and they'll raise. Michael Sullivan also did one. I think that broke $100,000. They'll raise a significant amount of money, but that's because these guys have been writing for, most of these guys have been writing for quite a number of years, and they have a following, and, they are able to create these very high quality products, books full of illustrations with beautiful bindings, and these are like custom printed, and they get them printed from these, like, and they get them printed in a certain number, so they're taking on a risk. So it's a whole undertaking to do this, and it does depend on your following. If that's the only way to get a Kickstarter funded. But if you can pull it off, if someone wants to do this idea and they've done the math so that it comes up profitable, and they want to pull off something like this, it's doable. I mean, Brandon Sanderson raised $40 million, but his goal was 1 million. So the threshold is not so insanely high, I guess, to make this kind of thing profitable. But it is an undertaking. I certainly don't have the time myself, so someone with a real passion for this idea would have to do it.
I think if we had enough indie authors that had enough of a following, if we got them together, we could legitimately do something like that. You would have to have, indie authors with a certain amount of sales that could garner a certain amount of interest, and I think you'd need, to have those indie authors driving that, especially ones that have had previous success with fundraising, and there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of there's that recent anthology going on right now with Virginia McLean. They sold out. I think they made their goal. It was like record time, and then they already sold out the pre-orders, and like it's going really well. But you need to have a conglomerate of authors that those names, like if Will White, wanted to do a Kickstarter, someone like that, if he was involved, you need the right people involved. But yeah, it could really work. Now Taylor's got my mind going. She's got my mind going about this thing. Like it's a fabulous idea. It's the who, right? But as Zamil said, it is possible. I did have one question for the bloggers, and Steve included, when it comes to this stuff. Like, are you more inclined to, like, knowing what you know now, because for a lot of you, admittedly, and it's fabulous that you're doing this, like you're really now starting to get into indie authors. Like it's now that you're starting to really, read indie authors and appreciate what's out there. Do you think that there will come a point where, most of your reading list is indie authors? I'm not saying that you should one way or another, because they're both, we as indie authors try to dispel the inequalities. We're all the same. Like indie authors, trad authors, and in the author community, I think most of us feel we're all the same. Like there's no hierarchy. But I know for a lot of bloggers, I know bloggers that have friends, and they're fantastic people. They're friends of mine, and they will, almost like indies. It's a rare indie book that they'll read. Maybe they've had bad experiences, etc. But do you three feel like there's a point where your list could be, your TBR could be 50-50? Like, do you think it's...
You want to go first, Steve? I saw you.
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay. For me, it's not... It kind of connects to our previous conversation. So do I see a time where, the quality of the books and the interest in the books could be 100% indie? Yes, absolutely. But part of this does come back to the previous conversation of the numbers suck, but they do exist. And so I think, and also, I mean, I don't want to just say it's just numbers. I like some traditionally published books a lot. So, Brandon Sanderson has been mentioned quite a bit here, and I'm not saying he's the pinnacle. He has a very easily accessible writing style. So I think he's very, prolific in that regard. But I really do enjoy his work. So would I not read his book because it's traditionally published? Not necessarily. So, and I don't think that's what you're trying to say. I'm just saying that, for me, I think a 50-50 split is definitely possible, because I really enjoy indie works, and thanks to, again, previous discussion, but Kindle Unlimited, I have access to a lot of those works where I am. There's no reason not to. I mean, if you really care about numbers, though, some of the reviews that you do for traditionally published works, even though 1 million people have talked about it, will get more views than a self-pub book no one knows about, which is not fair. And if it's something that you enjoy and you want to talk about, I think most people will make that anyway. And I know Lana and myself and Steve do anyway. But I do think that if you're talking about the future in general of BookTube, if you want to expand it, it might be harder if you care more about numbers, if you're like on the build, because it is harder to catch the algorithm on its way up with a more, self-pub or indie traditional, indie video versus traditional published. So, I mean, we've talked about before that, Lana's had this, I already did that. Lana's had this, and Steve have had this on lock for a while, and I'm new to the game of trying to focus on that more on my channel, but I definitely would see it growing. 50-50 split was definitely something that I think has already kind of happened, to be honest. I haven't made the videos about it, but this whole month has been, me talking about indie books. Or me reading indie books, and then in my vlogs talking about them. So the split has already occurred. So, but how that will expand to the whole community, I can't really speak for everyone, but that's where I am personally.
What about you, Lana?
For me, it's pretty close to a 50-50 split already. And the thing that does swing that out to more traditionally published is only the book clubs that I'm involved in. And they're like, we're reading this, and this, and they all happen to be traditionally published. So I'm like, okay, and that swings it. But most of my the books that I choose and that I put on my TBR each month are indie. It's because, I don't know, I just prefer it. I just prefer indie. But that's like my little niche thing. And I have lots of, because I also have a blog as well. I'm not very active on it and I need to work on that. But because I have a blog as well, I have a lot of indie publishers email me from there, or from Goodreads saying, I saw your Winds of Strife like review on your website and I thought that you might be interested in my book because it's blah, 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 blah. And so I'm actually finding a lot of indie authors that way, which is pretty cool, especially when every so often I'm like, hey, I already have that on my want to read TBR, which is really cool. But yeah, I would say the more just sort of straying away from BookTube, but I don't know if any of you guys are on Book Talk. I would say there is a lot of room for
We're too
indie.
old, Lana. We're too old for Book Talk.
Look at this beard. Look at this beard, Lana. It's all gray.
we all just go,
Yeah.
no, sweetie, no.
I don't post content. I just watch and fall down the rabbit hole. But there are a lot of romance and romantasy, I guess, authors doing really well on that social platform and getting their books out and having like Book Talk influencers pick up their books and push them, and are doing really well from them, like the Zodiac Academy by Caroline Peckham, and I can't remember the other author's name, but they're doing really well because of Book Talk and quite a few other authors. So I think there's a big sort of platform that could be used for like fantasy. I'm in horror Book Talk now, which is cool. So I'm finding a lot more horror indie authors. But yeah, I'm slowly finding my way through all of the other genres in indie books through Book Talk. So I've got like a little side playlist on Goodreads saying TikTok made me do it. And it's like accumulating more and more books because of TikTok. So I think that is going to be the way, because as BookTube is going, I think Book Talk is going to be the way that a lot of indie authors are getting out there. With the youngins, at least. Myself not included in that demographic.
I just want to make sure I add to the comment. Like, so when I say we're too old, I mean, like, I have too many platforms where I don't think I could handle managing another platform. But my dad messaged me and said, hey, do you have a TikTok? Because I've heard like you make money if you talk about books on TikTok. And I was like, okay, listen. Like, I don't know if I could do that right now. But what you're saying is absolutely true. And that's a really good point. So when I talked about we'll expand to the outer community, I guess I'm talking about old hat BookTube. So it's a really good point to make that. You know, I think, what was it? Ice Planet Barbarians, like completely just like alien smut indie books became traditionally published because of people talking about it on BookTube, and people love it. So I think that's a really good point that Lana made. That it is a new market for that.
I think that, you know, if you're able to take advantage of these like new up and coming platforms early on, that's a huge advantage. And it's the same thing like with trends in fantasy. If you can hit like the trend at the right time when it's like starting to explode, and a lot of that is luck, but that's a huge factor in success. Like I think right now, a lot of people are looking for cozy fantasy. So that's like an up and coming subgenre that is starting to really get traction. Do you guys have any insight? I mean, of course you do, since you know this is what you do. You have like any ideas what people right now are really looking for? Because I think certain subgenres are kind of in the rear view mirror now, like grimdark, for example. A lot of people are kind of getting over it to some extent. So what do you think are like the up and coming trends that people are looking for in fantasy.
I'm going to pass this to Steve, but the reaction when you said Grimdark is in the rearview mirror, he was like, excuse me, like Gesundheit. But I'll pass it to Steve since I kind of talked over your turn before. My apologies, but take it away.
No problem. I don't pay attention to trends at all. I don't really. I just pick up what I want. Like I just pick up what I think I'll enjoy. Because reading it, if it's a movie, then maybe I'd pay attention to trends a little bit more because it's a 2-hour investment. But if I'm investing 10, 12, 13, 14 hours into a book, I'm going to read what I want to read and not what's, like cozy fantasy. I get like I get the appeal, but I don't know. It's not for me. That's not what I'm interested in. So yeah, but the whole TikTok thing is interesting. I just don't have, like Taylor said, I just don't have time for I can't keep up with what I have now. And I just try to have my focus on one thing because in the whole TikTok thing, I just don't get it. But I don't know. It's not for me. Not my cup of tea. Maybe I'm missing out on some growth there, but it's a hard pass for me. But
it's so hard to choose. Like and obviously the booktubers feel the same. It's so hard to choose, especially as an indie author, and you want to get your book out there. It's so hard to choose where to invest your time, which platform. Like, my friends have been telling me for, the last few years, Paul, you have to get on Reddit. You're not on Reddit. Like and I'm like, I want to, but I can't. I don't have time. Like I don't know if every time I look at it, I'm like, it looks fantastic, but it just looks like this big, huge, a million wormholes that you can just, get lost down and you name it, TikTok, all these there, I find already that I'm oversaturated with social media, and I'm oversaturated, especially through blogging and between blogging, trying to promote my own book, and just generally talking to friends and family, and you feel you can't disconnect. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of writers burn out. Excuse me. It's a lot of times I find now the burnouts you're seeing amongst writers specifically. I've seen several now fairly prominent indie writers. I need to take a break. I need to take a break. It's not because, and sometimes of course it's something in their personal life, etc. But the people I talk to nowadays, a lot of it's because of social media. And when I've ever felt on the edge of burnout, it's because I feel like I've just been inundated to a degree with, and I love social media. I love the interaction. I love, be able to meet new people and make genuine connections, all that stuff. But there is a cost. And like reading burnout is hard to avoid. I think Taylor, made an excellent point about DNF of books before, like, and as a blogger or YouTuber, sometimes you feel that sense of obligation again to read certain books. And, I'm trying to be very much more selective now because, I don't want to burn out on that end either. But yeah, when it comes to these platforms, I just feel like I love things like this where, I can talk to people. I mean, I can't see you all in person, but, if we were sitting together in a bar or coffee shop, we'd be talking this way, right? We'd be doing the same thing. But this is the stuff I really enjoy, that connection, I guess in a group or one-on-one with, and virtually. But I find myself, like having to pull back more and more from all these platforms, as valuable as they could be to my brand and marketing. I just feel like, sometimes this is too much. And the more the more I think about taking on more is the more I go, I gotta back away. So.
I think another thing that these platforms spend a lot of time and money and resources to make sure that they keep your eyeballs on their platform. They're built to keep your attention fixed on whatever it is that they're pushing towards you. So they want you to put your time. They're time sinks, as all these platforms are. They're time sinks that are built to manipulate. No, I don't want to manipulate because you're choosing to be there, but they choose ways. They have methods to keep your attention for the most time as they can. And they have all these algorithms and all these scientists and all this stuff that they have to keep your eyeballs on their platform. So that's why I can't, because I'll end up, even with Twitter, even though I enjoy Twitter, I find myself scrolling and I'm like, why am I wasting my time? And then half the feed is people I don't even follow. So It's like I have to turn it off and just get back to reading or whatever it is I'm doing. But I do want to make a quick comment about reviews and getting the word out for indie authors. Whenever we make a review and we tag you in the, and speaking of the author, Zamil and PL, whenever we like mention your book or review it or whenever you guys retweet it, that's a huge boost. So that's really important for those of us who make videos and create content, is whenever you guys boost that or just make it, because people who follow you will find that too, and then it just starts to snowball. So that's huge for anyone out there that's an author. That whenever someone makes a comment, or of course if someone makes something negative, you're not gonna boost the signal for something negative. But if it's a review or you're on a TBR or on a list of books that month or whatever it is, whenever you boost that signal, it really helps out a ton.
Well, thank you. I mean, you guys are the ones that are boosting us, and it would only be. I mean, we love to do it in turn. I'm sure Zamil feels the same. But aside from that, you three specifically, I know there's lots of great YouTubers and booktubers out there, but I lose hours to watching all three of your stuff. Like I've been deep diving on all your channels, and obviously most of your content has nothing to do with me, but it's incredible, and I just I'm just blown away by the kind of things that you're putting out there. And I think again, I'll say you guys are the unsung heroes of the writing community, whereby I think when you're willing to put yourself in front of a camera and you're not sure if people are, it's one thing if I put a book out there and nobody buys it, right? There's not an actual, I can always hide behind my cover, right? Most people don't know what I look like or how I sound, or unless they watch something like this. But for you folks, you're front and center, right? So, I admire your courage, and a big applause to that, you guys are willing to put yourself out there and do that, because, it's not exactly for the faint of heart. So, and you do it so well. So, but no, you folks, without booktubers and reviewers, authors, so much of our work would go unnoticed. So thank you. But what you put on your channels, aside from, just reviews, is fantastic content. There's a lot out there. So I encourage anybody who's out there, following has nothing to do with it. And I hope you folks realize that, your followings are definitely growing. You guys are starting to really get up there. And I think it was Steve. I haven't had time to look at it. Steve put a post on a couple of days ago about a new booktuber that just started. I'm sorry, I apologize, I can't remember the name, but all three of you were obviously there at one point, right? Just like, at one point, Zamil and I had no readers. So, but I don't think you realize how much all three of you are growing in popularity, and certainly respect and acknowledgement. So, hats off to you for that.
Thank you. That's really sweet. When you were talking about diving into the deep hole, I was just like, you're welcome. I post so regularly and not very often. It's not a very deep hole. And also what you were saying before, Steve, about when authors reshare your content, Zamil shared, retweeted my review, and then from him sharing that, there are authors that I've read and been like, I love that author. Or actually, there are also a couple of authors that I've recently backed to Kickstarter, have read some of the books and kind of just fangirling. They've since followed me because Zamil shared my review, and I was just like, oh my gosh. So yeah, it 110%. When you guys do that, we get the warm and fuzzies instantly, and then the butterfly effect from that, and it just makes you want to keep going as well. So thank you.
I want to second that. Thank you for everything you said, PL. But also, Zamil, when you retweeted mine, I got the same thing. I got followers from indie authors. I was like, I had a moment. And at one point, I did a review of Rob J. Hayes' book, the War Eternal series, and he retweeted it. And I was like, one of my booktube friends sent me a private message because I don't get on Twitter that much. And but if I see a private message, I'll get on. And she said, this review looks familiar. And I was like, oh my God, like just to have that moment made my whole day. So just to quadruple, triple that comment, that just that little retweet button means the world to people like us, you know. But also just to go back to the original question, I think that Zamil had was like, what are people looking for? When you say cozy fantasy, speaking of Twitter and things, I think maybe what you're referring to might be a Legends and Lattes. I don't remember the author's name right now, but that went off. And I was one of those people when he said, do you want, you know, an ARC version? I was like, me, you know, immediately. And so I think that there is a market for that because us readers look to books as an escape world. And so Grimdark is its own escape in a different way. But I think, and I mean, I love Grimdark. I read, probably most of what I read is Grimdark. But I do think that there's a comfort in reading a book where no one's going to die. And you're just like, I can just enjoy this moment. I can just enjoy this space. It's basically the market scene you get in all fantasy books where you get to introduce to the market, which is one of my favorite things ever. Zamil, your book, when that happened, I was like, ooh, here's the market. Yay. You know, like, so it's basically that expanded for a whole book. And so I think people who are looking to, you know, have an escapism aspect to it are really enjoying cozy fantasy right now. Now, have I dived into it yet? No. Do I think I'm going to love it when I do? Yes. You know, so I do think that that's a trend. And then just to add to that, what do people want? I think we talked about this offline before, but the idea of the unhinged woman is so popular right now, myself included. But if there's an unhinged woman in your book, people love it. You know, and you've got plenty of that in Conqueror's Blood. But, you know, another good example of that is like the Grace of Kings series. Like, the unhinged women's are untouchable in that series. And so I think if you want to ask what people are enjoying, I'm seeing so many people talk about those types of characters, like everywhere.
And Andres has a comment really quickly. How do you get books and writers notice that constantly fall through the cracks that simply do not get any reviews and are overlooked? It's a good question. Just to talk as much about it as you possibly can. And like we mentioned, that having the author retweet or other people boost the signal helps out a ton. But it is tough to get the word out there. So it's nice when we all help each other out and just boost each other's signals. It goes a long way. That little retweet button doesn't cost anything. It takes not even a second to click that button, and it makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. I mean, what you folks do for I mean, I'm looking at Steve's shelf right now, and my book's back there, and you know, I know Zamil's is on there somewhere, and you know, I watched one of I literally, like, you know, you have that real like giddy moment. I was watching one of Taylor's videos, like, oh my God, my book's on there. and it was I can't even explain the feeling when someone is boosting your book. You know, that's a especially when there's having it visually, it's just that much more of an impact. That just go, you know, I mean, obviously I'm a blogger in written form, but when someone has your book on a video and they can see the cover and your name is mentioned, it's just, you know, Zamil, I'm sure Jamil feels the same. I'll let him answer, but yeah, it is just, it means so much. And I think the one thing as well, that when someone does that, is you finally feel like your book is really out there in the wild. Beyond initial publication is when you see it like it's almost like it's in lights. It's like you really feel your book is being seen by a really big audience, right? When you know, even if it's just a 5-second flash of the cover and a 5-second comment and mention your name, it's just it's bigger. As an author, it's like it's that wow moment. So thank you, Taylor, for that. That that was definitely one of my highlights when that happened. So yeah, it means a lot.
Any day.
Also, just in response to that comment, if Andreas, if you have any in particular, can you DM me on Twitter, because I have a recommendations list for an upcoming readathon, and one of them is ties into that. So if you have any specific recommendations, please let me know.
And Zamil, I think you're about to turn to a pumpkin on us, so
Yeah.
so keep it too long.
I'll give one comment on what Andres mentioned. And that is the importance, and this applies to all 5 of us, and that is the importance of algorithms. So on YouTube, the way your video gets recommended is through algorithms, and it's the same thing on Amazon. Algorithms make a big difference on whether your content falls through the cracks and kind of disappears, or whether it catches on and gains some notice and traction in the community. So the thing about algorithms is that let's say someone does a review of your book, and like 100 people watch it, and maybe 10 of those people buy the book, as an example. The algorithm will be like, whoa, this book is getting interest from somewhere. So now maybe I should start promoting this book to other people on Amazon. And it's the same on YouTube. Like if 100 people see the video on Twitter and they watch it and they like it and they recommend it, then the YouTube algorithm will be like, whoa, I better start recommending this to more people. So, and the thing is that sometimes something will really catch fire. Like you hear about this, I'm sure you YouTubers hear about this all the time. Someone's channel out of nowhere will get like 100,000 views on some content, whereas they had like 50 subscribers or something before that happened. And then all of a sudden they're huge. So luck plays a huge role in this. And, I watched a video by Veritasium where he said, I made this thumbnail, and it was just because of this thumbnail, which had like, he went to this reservoir in California that was filled with these black balls. I don't know if you guys have seen this video, but it's filled with these black balls that absorb the sunshine or something. And it was such like a crazy picture that everyone who saw that picture clicked on it. And just because of that one video, he got like 100 million views. So it's kind of the same with books. Like you might have a cover or a title or just something that just everyone sees and they just click on it, and then they instantly want to buy this or watch this video. And it could be just a stroke of luck or just one decision that you made that causes it. So that's kind of the world we're living in. Whether no matter what kind of content you're creating, it's all dictated by these recommendation engines. So on that note, I do have to go. I have a doctor's appointment, unfortunately, but it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you guys again. So
it's an honor,
let's do
Zamil.
this again.
It's an honor.
Thank you guys so much.
As
Thank you.
always, a
As
joy.
always, Zamil. It's a joy to talk.
See ya.
Thank you. Take
See
care,
ya.
Zamil.
Yeah.
So wonderful human being. Sorry, there's a question in there. I'll let Steve get to it before I.
John said it, and I actually read one of John's short stories on my podcast. But he says, I like when booktubers finish a book they hate. Nothing more entertaining than a rage-filled review. I actually don't do negative reviews. I just don't. I know some people like to do it, but if I don't enjoy something, I might mention it really quickly, just it's not for me kind of thing. But I would hate for especially because mostly what I read is indie. So if I make a negative review, it can, because I've had an author come to me or just through casual conversation told me that a booktuber that I know they have, I don't know, maybe 10,000 subs by now, maybe a little bit more. They made a 3-star review on their book, and he said that his sales tanked for the series after that, and that it really made a huge difference. So I'm really comfortable with that too. Whenever I do comment on a book I didn't enjoy, I like to pretend they're in the room with me. So I won't just sit there and say, oh, this book is trash, I hate it's garbage. I'll just try to be respectful, but these are the reasons I didn't enjoy it. It's not for me, but it may be for you. Someone else may enjoy it. Just because I didn't enjoy it doesn't mean someone else won't. So I'm curious what Taylor and Lana think about that, about negative reviews or rage-filled reviews.
I've only ever done one, and surprisingly, it's like in my top 3 videos every month getting views. And it is like the one like rant review that I've ever done. So I'm not opposed to doing them, but I just refuse to do them for indie because it doesn't help anyone. And the book that I rant reviewed was also not a new release. Like it was like quite a bit older. It wasn't like if I'm going to do a negative or like a sole negative review for one book, then I have like categories that it has to fit in for me to do it. And I also have to have wanted to really like it or liked most of it, but this just really wasn't for me, or it frustrated me, and why did you do this, author? It could have been great. But if it's just because the book wasn't for me, then I'm honestly not going to waste my time, because there's only so many ways you can say the book wasn't for me. I was not its target audience.
Yeah, so just riding off of what Lana said, I did the 20, we do 2021 worst and best books, or a lot of people in the community do. And my worst books video, which really wasn't that spicy, to be honest. I mean, I had opinions, but again, on like older books, that is still constantly getting views, and it's one of the best videos I've ever done. So negative talk gets views. So I can see why people do it. And I mentioned earlier in this stream that I just did a rant review for the Crescent City book, but kind of as Lana mentioned, there is a contextual, it's important to think of context of the book when you're doing that. So like, I'm not going to hurt Miss Sarah at all with my review. Like she's good, so when it comes to something like that, I feel like it's for, people say reviewers are for the readers. And I absolutely 100% believe that. Reviews are for readers. They're not for authors. But authors are also human, right? So for me, getting more into indie, I'm glad to hear the way that Steve and Lana handle it, because it's new to me. But I feel like that's different because, like I said, context matters. So if you're an indie author where, again, you're screaming into the void, Amazon's got you in a chokehold, every review counts. So I want to handle that with more care than I would something like a Crescent City book, right? So that's something I definitely want to keep in mind. But also from a reader's perspective, and I also agree with this, many of us say, and will continue to say, that if all your reviews are good, I don't trust you as a reviewer. And I feel that. I definitely feel that. Because if you're like, everything is candy and rainbows and I love what I read, like we've talked before also about, a negative review can recommend a book to you. Like if it's not, this is trash and I hate it, if it's a good negative review saying, I gave this 4 stars, here's why, I don't like this trope. But then I watch that and I'm like, that's my favorite trope, I might pick that book up. So if it's a well thought out and not negative spirited, like a full on, I hate this work of, fiction or nonfiction, whatever. But if you don't have that spirit in the video, it can actually help sell books, in my experience, because I've had that reaction to a negative review before. So, but when it comes to letting out your feelings, yeah, it's cathartic. Like I had things to say, which will come out soon, but it felt good to say them. But I will admit there's a contextual aspect to it that should be thought about, I think, more than some reviewers do think about it.
Yeah, I think the closest one I've had to negative was the Faithful and the Fallen series. I did a Luke, I didn't trash it, but I just wasn't for me kind of thing, and I had so much hate mail for that. I got a lot of hate mail for that. But it's just but I think that's a good point about if everything is positive, you don't trust the reviewer. So I do try to be not rant and rave, but just, and another great point that you made, Taylor, is that when I see a negative review, like I'll go on Goodreads and read 1-star reviews for books that I'm thinking about buying, and if it says this book is too dark for me, I couldn't handle it, it's too violent, I didn't like didn't like any of the characters, I'm like, bye, I'll read that. So the negative reviews, they do help, if when they're done respectfully, of course, they do really help out.
Yeah, I definitely feel that, and as a blogger, and here I don't want to be a hypocrite because while I'm saying that there should be parity, between indie trad authors and we're all the same and all that. There are some levels on which, as you all hinted, that we're not the same, and kudos to you guys for, especially when you take that into consideration when it comes to indie authors, because a traditionally published author with their publication houses, they might get to send out thousands of ARCs, and they'll have thousands and thousands of reviews on their books, right? Just by virtue of their publishers sending those ARCs out and getting reviews back. Whereas an indie author, in the lifetime of a book, if you have more than 100 reviews, you're doing well, right? So, and so in that case, we're not created equal. And obviously, in saying that, one negative, and when I say negative, I mean mean-spirited, like you said, not a critique review, not assessing the book on its merits, but more, I hate this book because I just hate it, it's bad, etc. Those reviews can really negatively impact indie authors. So we really do appreciate when I have no issue with someone giving my book a bad review. I hope that it's articulate and thoughtful in the criticisms, but yes, of course, and I appreciate that's just part of the game. We expect to get that. No book is for everybody. But I do really appreciate that, and I don't want to sound hypocritical, that, you are taking into consideration that for indie authors, yes, that aspect isn't a level playing field. And, that parity is probably never going to be achieved because, again, traditionally published authors have publicists that they get thousands and thousands of ARCs out there. And people are willing to review their books at a rate and level that's impossible for an indie author. I remember sending, my wife and I, my business partner, sending out thousands of review requests for the initial book and only getting a handful. Right now, it's different. Now it's much different. But at first, you're like, who are you? Why would I want to review your book? So even just to get a review was a struggle. Unfortunately, that disparity still exists, and it's not the same when, as Taylor pointed out, Sarah J. Maas, her getting a 1-star review out of her hundreds of thousands of review really has zero impact on her career, her day. For me, it's or Zamil, something like that. It is a bit different. So, but while we want to be judged the same, we expect our work to be evaluated the same. Yes, those reviews do have a different impact on indie writers than they do on trad. So I try never to. I will not give a review that's less than a 3-star. If I give a review and it's less than a 3-star, I will not give a rating. I will simply review the book and give a synopsis somewhat of the plot and just perhaps some of my issues. I tend to my theory with writing reviews is that there will be an imbalance in terms of the positive feedback's like this and the negative feedback is like this, right? I may have a line or two as to why it didn't work, but largely I like to make them as glowing as possible and highlight the positives of the books and accentuate those positives. So that's just me. So.
Yeah, see, on my booktube, on my booktube channel, I won't go into it. I will say it wasn't for me, or this is what I didn't like about it, but then just skip right past it. But in a Goodreads review, I will say this is why I didn't like it. This is why I had a problem with it. Because like Taylor said, I've thought I like too many books. I don't, even the ones that I'm like, oh, that wasn't really for me, I don't really talk about it on my channel. So that's why I think I'm more, not so much I'm more honest, but I go into more detail about my thoughts and feelings on Goodreads as opposed to on my channel.
I agree with that as well. I mean, when it comes to making a dedicated review, I didn't like this book. That's really rare on my channel. But on Goodreads, I will say I didn't like this book, and I will say why. So it's really a different animal, creating a whole video, like visual form content to express your dislike of something is a whole different level of effort from writing a review, which you do for every book. So what sucks about, Zamil talking about the algorithm is the algorithm likes negativity. It really, really does, so it's just interesting where you make a video where you think, oh, this is like a normal video for me. I talked about a couple books I didn't like, but that's the one that will do well. And you're like, wait a minute, I had talked about so many other things in this video, or I talk about so many other things on my channel. Why is this the one? So it's really interesting as a creator because you have your own moral, compass that you want to stick to. And then there's what does well. So, I don't know. I wonder if that's going to shift as well. Like, I don't know if negativity always does well or if it's just a current trend. I'm not really sure. I haven't been in the community long enough to know. But something I've found just as a positive spin on this that has come from it is like discussion videos. So I really enjoy when someone takes negative feelings they may have had about a book and creates a discussion about it. So I didn't like this, and this is why. Everyone else, what do you think about this? Instead of just being like, I hate this book. And I find that content so much more interesting. And it's inspired me. Like, I have a couple of discussion videos planned for my channel, but they take work. And I think that's why we don't see them so often, because I have them planned, but I have more research I need to do. I got more things I need to read before I feel comfortable starting that discussion, right? So I think while that is a really positive spin on this negative trend, turning it more into what do you think, it takes more work than saying, I hate this book. So I don't think we see that as often.
And Chidi had a comment. Yeah, so I should just go with Amazon if I want indie books, if I can't get them from the author, because at least you get some money from that. I have never used Amazon ever. And I wondered, PL, how important is having your own website, having your own space, because you want, is that important for you? Even with other platforms, is it important for you to have a dedicated site that people can find you and find links and you can post interviews or blogs or whatever? How important is that for you?
Well, for me, it's everything because it's more about people getting to know me and who I am and I guess my brand essentially. On my website, I post a monthly blog. I do author interviews called 6 Elemental Interviews, where I ask creatives 6 questions about their work, etc. And I also post almost every any media content I have. So this wonderful podcast, anything I've done with in terms of media interviews, podcasts, written interviews, newspaper articles about me, it's all on my media page. Of course, I have links to all the books, and I do have a buy direct from the author links, and as well links to Amazon and Goodreads and all the platforms. I think for most writers, yeah, it's very much I know that for me, it's not so much about my website isn't so much about the selling of the book itself, but more about the getting to know PL Stuart and what the brand is. Some authors, for example, sell merchandise. Like, they would sell this stuff on their website. They'd have a store. There's some amazing authors that multitask, like Jenny Wirtz. She's an illustrator as well. You'll see samples of her artwork, incredible stuff, like, on her website. So it is really important. I'd be hard pressed to find an author nowadays in your traditional that doesn't have a website, because is that critical to your brand and letting people know all about you. I prefer, if I had a choice, I'd be doing podcasts every day rather than having like just somewhere where people can look generically and find out about. I'd like to talk to people about what I write and who I am and what I do. But I think in the virtual age, I don't think you can really survive without having a website, an author website, in today's day and age. So
That was something that you just reminded me about our previous discussion of different platforms. YouTube is long form. Podcasts are long form. This is long form. TikTok is short form. And I think, just PL, the way you talked about wanting to talk to people and take a minute and discuss something. I mean, I just talked about discussion videos, right? Like if your style is taking a minute with someone, I think not that it limits you in any way, shape, or form, but there are platforms that you will prefer, in that way. So you reminded me I had wanted to say that when we were talking about platforms. So, whether you want to be the brand of your book series or not, I do think that there's a very big difference when it comes to, because a 20-minute video on YouTube, not a big deal. I'm like, oh, this is a short one. 20-minute TikTok, what is this? So I really think there's a big difference there.
And also, like, just to sort of add on to what you're saying, PL, like, the beauty of having a website and people subscribing to, like, your newsletter is to actually have that data and actually be able to have those conversations with your readers and people that subscribe and want to get to know you. And you can have those conversations. And as a reader, to be able to hit to reply on a newsletter. I never used to subscribe to authors' newsletters. I was like, what do I care? It doesn't matter. But the more that I read and the more authors that I get to know, the more I'm like, I just want to drop you a line to say, hey man, I like this. It's like, and it's cool to be able to have the opportunity as a reader to start that conversation, or even just like drop a line to say that was cool. So I think that's cool for both the reader and also for you as an author to be able to do that. And I'm so glad that you have a website, because I'm one of those people that if I have the opportunity to get a signed book, I'm going to go direct and buy a signed book as opposed to go to Amazon every time.
Yeah, well, that's appreciated when people do that. But I guess on the flip side, you run the risk. Like I'm someone who's comfortable with putting myself out there, and a lot of authors aren't, and I totally understand that. We're all different. So I'm in some ways very introverted, but I'm also in some ways very much a social animal. So I don't mind doing that. But for authors who aren't as comfortable, I don't want to say it can limit them. I guess it's in some ways. I mean, there's many authors that you'll never see on the podcast, but man, they're selling a hell of a ton of books. And that's a testament to the quality of their writing and whatever they've done marketing wise, or people simply spreading the word for them. But for me, that's just who I am. I remember I had a football coach that said, if you're willing to show people who you are and take that risk, then there's a far likelihood that there's a greater chance people will like you. If they get a chance to know you. They can't know you if they can't like you if they don't know you. So, and I treat my writing the same way. I take that chance to put it out there because, a lot of people won't like it, but if anyone's gonna like it, they won't be able to like it unless they see it, right? So I don't. With the website thing though, I just want to quickly say that it's kind of hit or miss. I should pay a lot more attention to, my wife does as the business manager, to data and hits and stuff like that. But really for me, as I said, it's more just about the brand and getting to know me, like through like blogs, and also a platform for me to promote other writers. I'm really big on promoting other writers and people in the writing community. So, and doing things like this, like, having, again, unsung heroes in the writing community, like bloggers and YouTubers on, like that's what turns my crank. That's what gets me enthused, right? So because again, I can speak so much more effectively marketing someone else's book or someone else's work than my own. When you're doing your own, you feel very, it's almost disingenuous that you're, buy my book, or my book is great. Like, I'd much rather promote others. I really enjoy talking about other people's stuff even more than my own. So anyways, yeah.
And I think you're getting some gears turning, Taylor, with your subscription box idea. what keeps the price down is when you can print locally. The moment you have high shipping costs, it limits the audience. That's what I was thinking too, with shipping costs right now. Might want to hold off on that, but I think that's a great idea. I think that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, it is a great
I mean,
idea.
I agree. Oh, I'm sorry, Pio. I didn't mean to cut you off. No, I agree. I mean, shipping boxes to here? Are you kidding me? Like, so I promised I would show you the book, okay? The box, okay? Look at this thing. Destroyed. Absolutely. I'm going to cover like the important information on the back, but there's like holes all over this thing. It's horrible. This is what it looked like when it arrived to me. Someone had also opened the packaging of the book itself, ripped the packaging, and then put the ribbon on like it didn't matter. I was like, the disrespect. So, this is the first subscription box I ever went for. And one of the reasons I went for the Broken Binding is they have a universal charge for international shipping. So if you're international, this is what you pay. Usually if it's based on where I live, I have the highest charge. If it's from, the powerhouses of English books, right? So it's an interesting moment. So I really hope this doesn't happen with the next book. But that was a really, really good point about shipping costs and just how it arrives, because someone had a vendetta against, the blade itself. They didn't want me to get it, it seems like.
I feel better now. How about Whole Buck says, I think grimdark epic Grimheart is an upcoming trend. A lot of books I've noticed are going that way. Grimdark with a slice of hope.
So hope punk, right? Hope punk is what I think the technical
term.
Hope punk. Yeah, it was a writer friend of mine that coined that, not coined it, but it was coined previous to that. But I first heard it from them, and I don't know, and I don't know how you folks feel, but as much as I am anxious to read Travis Baldry's, the Lattes book, I think I can appreciate, I think, all types of book and all types of genres. And I'd love to read a book that's just filled with, just pleasant day-to-day slice of life with, not necessarily disembowelments and beheadings and, magic, people burned to the ground by magic, that, and I write that stuff, but, I certainly don't mind reading something different. And I love romance. I appreciate all kinds of books, but I think, this whole grimdark thing is, I write, and I said this before, a writer friend of mine said, what you write is more grimdark. And I said, first I was offended because I have this love-hate relationship with grimdark. And I was like, I'm not grim, my writing isn't grimdark. And then I sat down, I thought about it. Well, he's probably right. But, I think and it's interesting to hear what you folks would say. I think why grimdark is so compelling is that, there's so much in life that is like grimdark, and so much of real life, especially, if you look at today's news, and it seems that way. And although you would think, well, the first thing you want to do is escape from that, I think we're looking for some of the insights into that beyond just watching the news and going, why is this happening? And I know that's why I write. I write that type of dark fantasy because more about, well, why is this happening? What are some of the things that propel this stuff, or what's behind it, and what can we do perhaps to, avoid it, mitigate it, cope with it. So I'm interested to hear, I know Steve obviously loves horror and grimdark, and both, I've seen videos from both Lana and Taylor about grimdark books that they love. Like, what do you think it is that just makes people eat this stuff up? Like, this grimdark stuff.
For me, it's like you said, it is very close to a lot of real world stuff. But when you're watching the news, there isn't someone that you can get behind and back. You can't say, I am for this person, I am rooting for this person, or I just want to see what this person does, and see how their morality gets them, moves them forward in the plot of the book. So for me, it's like a way of, I've actually never thought of this, but I think it's just a way of sort of getting to experience that with a bit of me in there. Because like what's happening around the world, I literally can do nothing but watch. There's no like anti-hero or just badass going like hell forever that I can see. And like, yeah. So I think that's why I like it, because even though it is grim and it is dark, I'm still, there's always going to be like that one character that I'm rooting for, no matter what happens.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think I probably feel that way without I didn't realize I felt that way, but I think you made a good point there with that. It is something I actually asked myself, because there are several scenes, like, Shadow of the Gods behind me. There's a vicious scene, a couple very vicious scenes in that book. And I found myself, like, I reread one of those scenes like twice. And I'm like, why am I rereading this specific, like, why is this the scene that I'm rereading? And I think I've talked to other readers who do that, and we're like, okay, what is it about violence? Like, why are we rereading this scene? And I think a lot of it comes from the stark acceptance of what the worst of humanity can be. So we all kind of know it. And I think all of us strive not to be that. Most of us strive not to be that. But to have a book acknowledge, like, this is something humanity is capable of. It's a lesson that you can internalize whenever you read the books. And whether the book ends happy or the character you're rooting for ends up being terrible in the end, Grimdark plays with those ideas. So I think it delves into the idea of gray characters, which I talked about before, which allow you to assess your own morality through this character. So Zamil's book did that with like all of the characters. I was like, wait, you have committed atrocities, and yet in this next scene, I see your point, and it makes you self-reflect. So my guess is that even if readers aren't doing it consciously, we are subconsciously, being confronted with what humanity can do and how far your morality stretches in what way. And I think that's an exercise that's really important. So I think it's a subconscious and conscious act, but that would be my answer for that, for why Grimdark is just like this, juggernaut that it is. What do you think, Steve?
I think you're interesting points. I think for me, this is something I've talked to horror authors about, is what's the appeal of stories like this, or of, subjects like this. And I think it's the buffer between it being real and not. If I turn on the news, I know that's real, and I can't. But if I'm reading a story about it, then it gives you that room to. It's not so much of this is happening and I can't do anything about it. It's you insert yourself in the story, and you can question your own. And part of it is almost like reading a history book, like a fictional history book, because what's happened in history is a lot worse than what's happened in a lot of these books. So, if you want to look at Grimdark, look at history. History is whatever's happened in any book, something worse has happened in history at some point. So, but I do like the books that make you question and make you wonder. Just like Gunmetal Gods, there are some scenes in Gunmetal Gods that were tough to read, but I'm sure like I said, it gives you that room to it's not real. It's just a fictional story, and it gives you a chance to question your own judgment and your own morality in some cases.
I think, I don't talk a lot about what I do, but Steve knows I'm in law enforcement. And, when I look at my job and I look at some of the things that I've seen, and I look at the world, and I watch the news like everyone else. It's Andrew, Lana. I think Grimdark is very much a reflection of life, and sometimes with startling accuracy. And And I think that for those of us who are trying to understand and interpret the world around us, current events and things like that, you could do it in almost the safe confines of a book, right? Where you can, again, unfortunately, if something triggers you, you can close the book and stop reading. You can come back to it later. You can, but although you can turn off the news, you can't turn off life, and you can't get away from it, and you can't get away from most of these things. And I know for me, especially with my job, there's been times in my life where I can't get away. I can't get it out of my head, and it doesn't matter what I do. But when it's grimdark, it's selective. I can selectively choose to read it or not. And I think that was my initial opposition to grimdark, Jolene, where I thought that it would be too much like reading what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. And in some ways, there was a time where that was really fascinating, especially younger in my career, where I read mostly thrillers and mysteries and the same kind of stuff that I was dealing with. And then I think there was a time when I couldn't read that anymore, when the job got too much. And then I got back into fantasy, and I was more on that Travis Baldree, lighter, fluffier stuff at first. And then eventually I found my taste veering very much back into the dark sphere, just like the way I was into the psychological thrillers and mysteries and murder mysteries and police procedurals and things like that. And I think now, because I'm older and I'm a lot more comfortable with myself and where I am in my life and my job and everything else, I think that's why I'm much more able to read things like grimdark, and I'm embrace it much more, and probably why I write it now. I think there's a reason why I wrote so late in life, because I was ready to embrace and write about those things, and I felt there was a distinct purpose to writing those things, that it was really important to write about those things. Whereas, when I was younger, there was maybe a morbid fascination, but also a desire to escape from those things. But I kept straying back into them in one form or fashion or the other. So, and I think that's why, what I read now is most of it is dark fantasy or grimdark. And, that's okay. But I am looking forward to reading some of the lighter, the Travis Baldree type stuff. So.
Yeah. And just on that, because I'm I'm reading the Drowned Kingdom at the moment, and I have had to forget that you wrote it, because some of the darkness, I'm just I just can't imagine Pierre writing this. He's the sweetest human you'll ever meet. And then I'm reading this and I'm just okay, let's just pretend we don't know the author at all. Never met, don't know him from a bar of soap. Let's just pretend we don't know and then read. Because I'm how? What? Who? And then I've had to start, I think I got 7% in, and I was just no, okay, we're going to read this again and pretend we don't know who PL is.
I haven't picked it up yet. It's behind me right here. It's ready. It's my next read after Legacy of the Bright Wash. It is primed. But I also it's interesting because I feel being the brand of your book can have such amazing, incredible, aspects to it. But another aspect is, like Lana said, if you write something dark, we're well, the person that I know doesn't exude this, right? So there's an interesting relationship between the author and the book, and it's can have so many positive aspects to it too. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's negative, but I am prepared to do what Lana's doing and putting aside the person who has been just a wonderful friend thus far and being okay, this is the work that comes from this person. So it's really interesting, and indie is part of that, right? Because you get to know the authors. So just coming back to our previous conversations, this is new to me, and I'm really thankful I have people to tell me how they handle it. But I'm really excited to get to it. But based on the back blurb, I'm ready for pain. I've prepared myself.
Well, and I'm honored. I had no idea you're reading, Lana. I'm honored. Thank you for I'm honored, humble, kind of blown away that you're reading my book. All I can say is that, and I actually put a forward in book 2 after book 1 because of things that happened and responses, and a lot of them positive, and that I need to put forward to say, I can say this, and I've said it on air before, is that many of the things I've heard that authoring and some of my characters say in A Drowned King never have heard with my own ears, or I've family members, friends have experienced, or I've seen people say on, the media, that it is very much, unfortunately, a slice of life with the negative aspects of society I talk about, homophobia, racism, misogyny, religious intolerance, colonialism. Those are things that that touch me deeply, and that's why I read about it. And I read about it from the perspective of an extremely flawed character. And but it's actually the opposite of who I am. And I read about it, and I said this on a previous podcast. It was another episode of Page Chewing with Steve and two of my dear friends, writing friends, Holly Tinsley and Tim Hardy, that there's times in my life I felt very powerless to fight against injustice. And, there's lots of reasons for that, who I won't get into, but that comes out in what I write. And that's why I write from the perspective I do. So, but I'm humbled that you read my book. I'm kind of shocked. That kind of threw me for a loop, and I do hope you enjoy it. I know it's not for everybody, but I think I think it's very much it's a flawed book, but it's come from a flawed person, but it's mine. I wrote it, and I'm proud of it. So, but thank you for reading it. Take the time to read it.
You're so welcome, and you should be proud. But yeah, because I've read I've known and briefly talked to other authors, but not had the relationship that we do, prior to reading their book. So yeah, it was initially it was a shock, but it's an experience as well, and I'm just so excited, so excited to finish.
And Voices from a Mausoleum has a comment. This conversation about having socials and websites is relevant across the board, and Taylor is dead on. Learning what parts of what you do and where they fit is super important. And I think something I try and remember with TikTok is that YouTube has shorts, the YouTube Shorts thing. So you can do shorts, TikTok light videos on YouTube, and I see a lot of those doing really well. So I'm not sure how that fits into the algorithm or if it hurts your numbers because they're so short, but it's there.
I heard from Jessie over on the Bookish Mom, who's also a wonderful booktuber. Please go check her out if you haven't, those watching. But she's in digital marketing, that's her job. And so she made videos about how to market and why to market. And she was saying that whatever the new thing is on the platform, they're going to push it. So the new thing on YouTube is shorts. So if you're making shorts, they're going to push those things because they want people to engage with the new content they're putting out, the new form of content. And that made so much sense to me because she's even if you don't really know how to use it, most people don't, just try it because YouTube is going to push that. Or as Zamil said, I think, or no, you said, Steve, but before Zamil left, they want you to look at what they're putting out. So the push notifications are going to be for shorts. Things like that. They really want you to see whatever their new platform or part of the platform is. So I just wanted to shout her out for that because she's the one that mentioned that. And I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Not that I've done the thing that makes sense yet. I haven't made a short yet in my life, but the logic is absolutely there for that.
Yeah. And also from the creator side, I don't know if it's still a thing, but when they first brought shorts out, YouTube made it so you could monetize shorts without your channel being monetized. There was as long as it wasn't shared from another platform, it was original, copyright issues weren't there, then, and you had a certain amount of views, then you could get monetized just on shorts. I was like, what is this thing? I need to do it. And I just never did.
Amen. Time gets away. You just don't do it.
I just want to say a quick, again, I am just so impressed and blown away by the fact that three of you, you do this without, hope for remuneration, or, you do it because you love it and because you care about readers and writing and getting the word out there and posting good content. It still just blows me away that you guys do that. You know, and you know, just hats off to you again. I want to just thank all three of you for doing that, and it's very altruistic what you do, and I don't know if, and I don't know the full scope because I don't do it, but you know, I can't conceive of all the time and effort and money potentially that you put into doing this. So that's a big sacrifice. So thank you, and I know you all feel it's worth it because that's why you do it. But you know, like I said, I'm very, very blown away, you know, by the fact that you're willing to do that for all of us, because we all benefit. So thank you.
Riding off of that though, Steve, the amount of content you put out, I just have to like, bro, how do you do it? Like, that's my main question. Like, I have no other way to put that question, but like the podcasts that you do where you read short stories, which we all talked about how soothing your voice is, angelic, wonderful short stories. Just like, how? Because like, I know you're just as busy as I am, and this is the maximum I've got right now, you know, like to film and edit and post and then tag the description box. It's all like at least 5 hours together. So I want to ask you, I guess the specific question is not just how do you do it, but like time, is it time prioritization? Like, what's the key for how you're putting out what you're putting out?
Well, I think page chewing actually has been a blessing for me because I don't do any prep, because I know that between PL and I we'll find things to talk about, and I'll have ideas in my head or questions, but I don't write anything down. I don't have much prep time. So these are actually fun for me. This is just more fun than it is feeling like I'm getting content out. So with the interviews, I spend a lot of time writing down questions and trying to get original stuff, and that takes time to do and to organize, to schedule it, and all that takes a lot of time. The other ones, you know, the other stuff I do is I give up on my other hobbies. I don't have any other hobbies anymore. So the time I used to spend on my bike or doing other things, I don't have that time anymore. So I have to try, but I'm trying to be better this year about allowing myself more time to do things that I like, you know, run more miles per week and all that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to be better about that, but stuff like page turning really helps. But between reading and doing content, it's a lot of my day is either reading or just, thankfully, everyone here in my family likes to read, so we all have like reading time. It's quiet, so that helps out. But I always think it's funny when people think that we do this for money, like we're somehow benefiting. It's like this is just I spend a lot of time.
Bitch, where?
And it's like,
yes, take my action and add that, bitch, where? Like, where's the money?
and people are like, well, you know, they think that we somehow benefit. It's like we do this for the love of reading, and for things like this, we get to connect with people, not for you know, to make any money. And even the people who are monetized, the ones I've talked to are like, I can go to a fast food joint and get a quick meal out. I'm not making, you know, no one's gonna be like this huge booktuber that can retire and just make videos, at least none that I know. Maybe there are some, but it takes a lot of time and effort to get there. So, but I think, yeah, and it's like, we can only read so fast. So you know, it takes time. So, but I always love that misconception that like I'm somehow benefiting from this, that I do this, you know, all of us do this because we love it, not because we're somehow benefiting from it.
Yeah, just to make clear, like when I passed it to you, I'm in the same boat. Like I'm not saying you're benefiting from it. When I say you're benefiting from the fruits of your labors, I mean something like this. This is due to you. You introduced us together. And when I say, like, when we had that moment when you were like, do you want to do page chewing? I'm like, is that a question? You know, so you've created this group of people that I look forward to talking to for weeks. Like I told my husband, you know, I said, he's at work right now, but I said, you know, I'm going to be doing, you know, an episode with the people I talked to before on your birthday. And he's like, oh, so you'll be talking offline for a couple hours, right? So maybe you'll still be online when I come home. And I was like, well, maybe, you know, I can't say for sure, but it's possible, you know? So when you say this is why we do what we do, it really is. It really is, like 100%.
Yeah, Steve, what you've done is amazing to give us this platform, all the things that you do, all the content you post. As Taylor said, to echo Taylor, like it's just when I look at your channel and all the different, you have page chewing and your interviews, and as Taylor said, your short stories, and then like I have no idea how you do it. It's almost like there's a clone, and you have a few different Steves working on things, but again, hats off to you, brother, and I'm so grateful for you allowing me to come and do something like this and be a co-host on page chewing. And as for the group, I mean, as Taylor said, my wife kind of made the same comment, like, you really like these, you have a lot of friends and all these people in the writing community, but this little group, I said, I guess there's just, of all the amazing groups of people that, we all have our little groups and segmented off, and these people you talk to, and you have your friends in the writing community, your friends outside, and, your family, like, there is just something special about when I think the five of us get together that I hasn't, it's hard to replicate. And, it's just, that vibe that, I literally, like, I was up at like 5 o'clock. I was like, yeah. This is the morning, right? I get to talk to my four peeps, and, that's it really is a special feeling. So thanks, Steve, for allowing that to happen. Cause it's an irreplaceable, feeling when I know I'm going to speak to the four of you guys online. It really gets me stoked. And that's a testament to the people you are, right? How much I appreciate your friendship and enjoy talking to you also.
Yeah, same. And when you first asked me to be a part of it as well, I was just like, what? I was like, little old me, what do you want me? But this is just like the whole experience. Every time we get together, or even just in a chat, is just amazing. I feel like it's weird because, like, in this community, there are so many amazing people, but I'm in like lots of different groups that I just sort of lurk in. But this is one of those ones that it's just like, whenever I open up Twitter and see that someone has posted in the chat, I'm just like, I don't know, it's relaxing. It's like coming home.
I love that. I love that so much. So I don't know if anyone has anything further to say on this, but I want to say the chat thing. Are you guys interested in meeting my diva of a pet? You guys hadn't met him, Pretzel, yet, right? So there was interest expressed in the chat. Speaking of chat, so
no. Yes,
I can go grab him.
I saw him on I saw him on 2 of your videos, around your neck, and the one post you made about someone wasn't feeling well, I think, and it was great to brighten their day. You showed a picture of Pretzel, so yeah,
the Pretzel.
I would love
if
to.
you guys are interested, I can grab him before the end of the stream. You want me to? All right, I'll be right back.
Yeah, Pretzel is is going to become a new member of the Avengers team, I think. Pretty. It's a cute looking snake.
And Joseph said, what I do with shorts is put a link to my longer videos in them. That's a good idea.
That is very smart. Like yes, that comment right there. That's what I think.
Steve never sleeps. Yeah.
And like when I edit or when I export things in Filmora, it says, do you want to do like a highlight, like a 60-second highlight? I have tried it, and it is like, it just automatically does it. It's horrible. And for me to like go through and edit like just 60 seconds of it and like the best bits, show me your ways, because I don't know, JR.
And Jonathan says, I use shorts to give quick shout outs to indie authors that I have read, but I also provide links in the description on the video to an editorial on that work. That's great. Great idea too.
Yeah, shorts are, I guess, I remember when I first made my trailer video for Drowned Kingdom, and I knew it was a bit long because all my friends were saying, don't make anything that's over 30 to 40 seconds long because it doesn't fit on most links. And yeah, I know attention spans are short now, and that's one of the reasons why I took. Oh, it's a Pretzel. Oh, what a cutie.
He's a sleepy boy. Sorry to cut you off. I know you're in the middle of something, but he's a sleepy boy right now. He'll start moving soon, but he's gotten pretty big. Let me see if I can unpretzel him from himself. So he's gotten a bit bigger.
I know I know nothing about snakes there. So how old is Pretzel? Like, how long do snakes live? Like,
So, so he's a ball python. So let me just get that out there for those watching. So there are lots of different types of snakes. You know, some you should not handle, some you should. Ball pythons specifically are totally fine to handle. We got him when he was a baby, not like a baby, but probably about 3-4 months old. So he's about a year now. And so he's grown a lot since then. But he's a male, so he won't get as big as females. He's probably going to grow for another year or two. And then when it comes to how long he lives, ball pythons are about 15 years commitment. So 15 to 20 years, if you take care of them well, if they're healthy. So when I told my mom in America that we got a snake, she was like, "That's great. Not coming in my house, though." So I got to figure something out if we ever go to the States. But yeah, so he's not a baby, but probably a young adolescent at this point.
beautiful. Oh my gosh, beautiful.
Yeah, he's
This
how
clone's
do I say?
amazing.
Snakes have personalities. People don't believe that, but they really do. So he's super curious, but he's not the brightest tool in the shed. So he's not smart, but really, really curious, and he loves to explore. So we have what we call adventure mode for him. So when he wakes up, he'll start probably trying to climb on my head and what's this texture, what's that kind of thing. So excuse that when it happens. But yeah, he's just I don't know what I would do without him, honestly. People, you know, I love dogs, I love cats, but people think snakes can't be comforting. They absolutely are. They really, really are.
Yeah, that's a beautiful looking animal.
15 years. Wow.
15 years. So what made you decide snakes specifically, like to get a snake of all the pets that you like? What was it about snake?
Really good question. So the only person that this is a secret from is the owner of this entire building because so people I know people, okay, who
Mom's the word.
Mom's the word. I know people who also have things in their house that are not human, but technically it's not allowed. So I'm a dog person, but there's no dogs need to be allowed. You know, you got to walk them and everything like that. But a snake you'd never ever hear that one exists. And honestly, hello, can I help you? And honestly, they're really not high maintenance. That was the other choice that we made. So both of us are really, really busy right now. And so we can't walk a dog or, you know, take care of a cat the way it needs to be taken care of. But a snake, honestly, once you get their house right, they're easy to take care of. They need the proper humidity. They need the proper heat. Otherwise, they will die very quickly and very soon. But if you get that all right, you need to feed them once every like 10 days, and they're cool otherwise. So if you have a type of snake that doesn't need to be handled, they'll just hang out forever in the nice, you know, setup that you have for them. If you have a ball python or someone with his personality that likes to come out, you know, if you handle them, you know, every other day or something, you're good for about an hour. So the maintenance is really low if you have a good setup.
Do you need like a license or anything? Because I know in Australia to have like a snake or a spider, like a decent spider, like a tarantula or something, or like even bearded dragon, you have to have a license. Do you need one over there?
I feel like the things available in Australia might require a license, but here, not at all. Ball pythons are available at any pet shop. So yeah, I mean, it's a beginner pet, I guess, when it comes to reptiles, because they don't have poison. Their teeth are small. They don't get big enough to harm you or anyone else. So, you know, as long as you have a good setup for them, they're pretty easy to buy. Also, any pattern is available. So they get more expensive, but you can get pure white, pure black. You can get like speckled. You can get, there's one called a banana that's purple and yellow. Like any design you want, you can get in this type of snake. So they're really easy to buy and have. In Japan, it's not really required. I also don't think it's really common in Japan to have them, but there's a couple shops spotted here and there. So those that love them, but it's not popular so much, which is a shame, really. Would any of you consider getting one, or do you have just like a not for me kind of vibe with them? Or
I vowed I'd never get another pet because after we lost our last dog, like it's just too heartbreaking. Like I'm sorry,
yeah,
I couldn't take it. Like that just destroyed me. When Maya died, she was an older dog, and I don't think and Deb and I say, okay, we're gonna live this. We're getting close to retirement, and we want to be able to take off and go on vacation without worrying about a pet. But at the same time, if you have a pet that's low maintenance, that maybe you can, cats are pretty low maintenance for the most part. However, cats, they love you when they love you, when they don't want anything to do with you, they want anything to do with you. But having had cats before, but now you've got me thinking, well, could we have something like a snake where, like you said, a bit lower maintenance, if you get everything right? Like, would it be something that, you could, if you had to go away for a while, like a couple of weeks or something, would it be okay if you had the right food left and all that, which I guess it depends on the snake. But
yeah. So ball pythons need fresh water every day or two. So you would just need to ask like your neighbor's kid, like, can you just put a fresh water, in here? And also with ball pythons, they don't strike often. So like, they're not aggressive snakes. So if you had someone who didn't like snakes, they could easily just like change the water and not be anywhere near the animal. So it's definitely manageable if you have something like this. Now, there are obviously more aggressive snakes that you would need special care if you go, but a ball python, zero issue if you had to go somewhere. Hello. Can I help you, sir? I told you, adventure mode.
He's just right up in your grill, like.
He's just like, what is this? He knows my smell, so he's not scared of me. He knows. It's a debate whether reptiles can love someone, right? So I think love is a dramatic word, but I think, they're not going to be like, you're home, like a dog, but he knows my smell. And if he's with other people, like if people come over and they hold him, he's kind of antsy. So he just knows this person, this place is safe kind of thing. So I don't think he'd go up in anyone's eye that he didn't know. But
Oh, wow. No, it's beautiful. Like it's beautiful.
yeah.
Wow.
I don't think I could do a snake. My cousin has a snake, and I'll like hold her cousin. I'll hold her snake. But I'm more of like, I've always wanted a bearded dragon, like always.
They're so smart. They're so smart.
But a chill one, because the daycare that my kids went to when they were like younger had like 3 bearded dragons, and 2 of them were in the foyer when you walked in, and they loved to be handled, and they were just really chill. And so like, every day would go in and like would handle like these awesome as bearded dragons, and they were just so soothing. And so I was just like, ever since then I've wanted one, and I ended up with 2 cats.
A lot of people have talked about snakes being like therapeutic, in the sense that if they're a slow snake like him, you don't have to think about anything. You just like move with them. Maybe the bearded dragon is the same way when you say they're calming. Like, I guess it depends on the reptile, but a lot of them move slow because they're not trying to use extra energy. So just like they move, you move. You like hang out together. You watch a movie together because they're not going anywhere. It's really comforting.
I know you have dogs, right, Steve? I think you have dogs.
We have 5 dogs. Yeah.
Oh, 5! Oh my goodness! Wow.
Oh my God!
Wow, it's a big
It
house.
took me a minute to process that number.
Yeah,
I can see you having something like a snake though, like something like calm, like your personality, Steve, because you're so calming. You're so, I can see you having something like that, like just kind of slithers around and just kind of,
Yeah, my daughter wanted a bearded dragon, and then we, I forget where we found we had we're a big fan of pugs, so we found a bunch of pug puppies, and she opted for the pug puppies instead. So we have a couple of pugs running around, and it's I don't know who owns pugs or who's owned pugs, but that snorting noise is it's weird at first, but once you get used to it, when it's not around, you miss the snorting and the snoring and the
I'm gonna full disclosure. I've never gotten the idea of pugs. Like I just haven't. But the snorting was part of it. But I can understand, if you get used to it, suddenly it's quiet. What's going on?
Yeah, they're funny dogs. And I think every time we lose a pet, we always say, well, we're not going to buy a pet ever again. But then you remember all the good times, you remember the journey and the good times you had, and what they brought to your life when they were here. So it's one of those things where is the journey worth the pain of when they pass? So that's the tough one.
Yeah, it's so hard, man. Oh my gosh. It's just, oh man, you realize that they just become, again, part of the families. They're still integral to, everything, right? And you build so much around them. And just like children, between Deb and I, we've raised 7 children, but certainly with pets, the investment is the same, monetarily and emotionally and otherwise, right? So, it's, so I don't know, at least for now, we're saying no, but it's still kind of fresh, but we'll see what the future holds. But pets are they do bring, as Steve said, a lot of joy into your life. And I mean, not like you can't have a full life without them, but just they do add something, and I think especially with dogs. Dogs are just those creatures that that unconditional love. They're always happy to see you. They you can have a fight or dispute with a friend or a family member or a spouse or a child or whatever, but dogs, they just, no matter what, right? They love you and they just want to be around you, right? And there's nothing else that they really require. Feed them, pet them, love them. It's just, one of those amazing creatures that, so who knows, never know. Now I'm looking at things differently with Pretzel. Who knows?
I mean, look, I convinced my friend here. She came over, she handled Pretzel, and then when she left, she was Googling how to set up a snake house. Like she was ready. Wow. So I think it's not that Pretzel has magic powers, although he is adorable. I do think that it's like people have a scary image of snakes, which I was definitely part of, right? You have this idea of like a cobra is dangerous. So it's not a bad image to have. Like if you see a snake in the wild, don't go touch it. You don't know if it's got poison, what type it is, that type of thing. But they're really not vicious creatures. Truly, if you don't touch them, they're not going to bother you in the wild, right? And then if you have ones that are used to humans like this, they're just noodles. They're noodles with a head, and they just want to know what's going on, So I think that's why he makes people interested, because it's not what you would expect,
Well, if we end up getting a snake, I can tell my wife, blame Taylor. It's her fault. That
I accept it. She can send me hate mail and I'll write back if I need to.
It's not a snake. It's just a noodle with a head.
It is. It's just why do you think that some of the more aggressive versions strike? It's all they have. It's all they have. Like if you scare a snake in the wild, what is it going to do? Scratch you? No. All it can do is bite, So, and this is called a ball python because, well, basically they're the bottom of the food chain. They have no poison or anything. So when they're scared, they don't run away. They curl into a ball and hide their head. So if you scare them, they become a ball. So they definitely won't bite. But like, of course, that's why snakes bite. Like, what are they going to do?
But yeah, even in the wild, because in probably about 40 minutes from my house, in rainy season, brown snakes move from the outer suburbs and the bushland, and they sort of come into all of the housing areas, and they're the most deadliest snake in Australia. Like you have, I think it's like a minute and 18 seconds to get the antidote if they bite you, or you're gone.
Yikes.
Yeah. But if you see them, like my friend had one at her house because she like heard her dog barking and she was like, that's a weird bark. And she like moved something and there was a brown under there and she was like, oh my God. And she like grabbed her dog. But as soon as she like pulled it up, the brown snake was like, bye, like gone.
I'm out, right? Like, well, they don't want to waste it on you. It takes time to build up venom. They don't want to use it on someone they can't eat. Like, why would they do that? You know?
They're practical creatures, eh? Yeah, it's
they
funny.
Really are.
Yeah, it's funny to say about Australia. Like, I know Australia, a beautiful place, and I would love to see it one day. I know that for some of my friends are like, well, there's so many poisonous and deadly things there in Australia. And I'm like, yeah, but it's beautiful. And I guess if hopefully you can, you don't bother them, they won't bother you. But, I remember hearing
out of sight, out of mind. Because I'm from New Zealand. We have nothing that can kill you. It's like the safest. Yeah. The most dangerous thing is like a ram. That's it. And like even our spiders are like nothing. We don't have anything that can kill you. It's like camping there is a dream. We don't have bears, we don't have coyote, we don't have anything like that. Like our like deer are tame, like super tame. And so like moving over here, I was so scared. I was the last of my family to move over because I was so scared, and I loved camping every summer. And so I was like, what am I going to do without camping? And I have still not gone camping. I've been here for 10 years.
Oh my God.
Oh.
But other than that, like I've been like surfing, and we have lots of great whites, we have box jellyfish, it's out of sight, out of mind. And if you do
the
see
casual way you say lots of great whites, like I'm trying to process that. I'm over here like snakes are fine, but then I don't know about that.
But yeah, it's just out of sight, out of mind. And then if you hear someone yell shark or fin, or you see like a jellyfish, you just casually paddle back in.
Well, if we ever come to Australia, we ever come to Australia, I'm asking you, Lan, okay, do we go here because is it safe there? And so I'll be calling and saying, Lana, like, is it safe here? Like, can I
like just swim between the flags, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
I logically know that sharks are not that much of a danger, but my illogical brain cannot comprehend that fact. There's just too many teeth.
James refuses to even go on the beach. He's like, people are stupid. Why would you go to the beach or go swimming in the ocean? Like, you can't get bit by a shark if you're not in the ocean. And so he just refuses.
Yeah. Well,
I went snorkeling in Bali, and I was so proud of myself. Snorkeling. Okay, I could still touch the bottom, but I was so proud.
You folks need to come to Barbados, just where I'm going to retire, where my mother's from. There's no sharks. Well, there has been a shark attack there in centuries, and they do have some jellyfish, not poisonous, but they can sting you. And but for the most part, it's a pretty safe, non-poisonous steaks, like Lana was saying about New Zealand, and it's pretty chill. So come down to Barbados if you want a nice place to take the family and a vacation where there's not a lot of dangerous things that will kill you while you're on vacation. So that's always a plus when you go on vacation, you come back alive. So yeah,
it's one of the things you hope to happen, right?
Yeah, you look for it. Besides a nice beach and some rum and nice drinks, you'll come back alive usually.
Well, this has gone away from books, hasn't it? And that was probably my fault. My apologies for that.
We had to see Pretzel.
Yeah, he's loving it. He's just having a hello again. Yes, can I help you? He's having the time of his life. So.
That was a lot of questions. Oh,
yeah.
Let's go to that.
I've subscribed to everyone here and bought Drawn Kingdom because of this group.
Oh wow! Thank you. I'm so honored, Jared. Thanks. Yeah, he posted that on Twitter that he's going to buy the other day. So,
Dress as the cat.
I'll have to share it later, but I'm assuming they're talking about Pretzel, but we put a Santa hat on him, and he didn't like that. He didn't like that at all at Christmas. We got a
I
picture.
gotta
though.
see that.
Oh yeah,
I'll send
You
the
gotta post
picture.
some of those pictures.
you gotta see that.
At the hat.
Junior says, I think snakes in general are not popular. I don't mind snakes, but I would never get a tarantula. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I like snakes because they don't have any legs. If something has a lot of legs, I'm not with it. So spiders, centipedes,
eyes.
Mm-mm. Or eyes. Yeah, 2's good. 2's a good number.
Pretzel Noodle, the snake looks at you and says, "Am I a joke to you, lady?"
You know, warranted. Warranted.
Well, I don't mind us getting sidetracked off of snakes because I think Presto's cute as hell. So I think he's gorgeous. So thanks for bringing him out. I did want to say about books. I know we probably. I was thinking about time because I look like, oh my god, 2 hours and 45 minutes.
It's so easy.
So easy to just get time get away. But I did want to quickly say, fit in this before we have to go, about booktubers that I said this on a previous podcast with Steve, and I thanked him for it, and I thank all booktubers for it. Is that for writers with the pandemic, you guys need to understand just how much more crucial, how much more critical what you're doing has been to help us all in terms of, because no book fairs, no live book conventions, no nothing, everything virtual. So one of the best ways to get your book noticed and out there is if a booktuber says something about it, and it's even become more critical during. So thank you for that, because I think that pandemic has really changed the dynamic in terms of marketing books, and especially being able to attend things in live. Like I just had my book launch, for the last of the Atalanteans. Of course, I couldn't have one for Drowned Kingdom. It was all planned because of the pandemic. I finally got to do it. It was an amazing experience, but you guys have helped really fill that void, that gap that was left from the absence of book fairs and book conventions and book signings. So thank you for that, because it really has been a difference maker in terms of us getting our books out there. So Steve, Lana, and Taylor, thank you. It's been a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That means the world. It really, really does. That's the reason to make months more of content right there. Exactly what you just said. So truly, thank you.
That's well said. And Jonathan says, Maine doesn't have any of those dangerous creatures. It gets too cold for poisonous snakes and no big spiders. Watch out for the moose crossings, though.
I've heard moose can be pretty bad when they want to be.
I'm
Moose are
terrified
deadly.
of moose.
Moose are deadly. Canada's got lots of them, and especially in Quebec and the more northern regions, and they will, unfortunately, they cause a lot of fatalities, and I mean, moose taking on car, moose usually wins. The moose may not survive, but you're lucky if you can walk away from a crash like that. So moose are deadly. So beautiful animals, though. Beautiful animals.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I usually wear glasses. I think he's trying to climb on where my glasses usually are. He hangs out up here, so I think that's what he's trying to do. Sorry, I lied to you. I don't have them on today.
Time always flies with this group. It just gets away from me. But I want to thank all of you for coming by to chat, and of course for the pretzel sighting. It's great to see pretzel.
I'll take him out whenever you want.
We need to see those Santa hat pictures. We have to see those. So please share those with us, because it'll be awesome.
It shall be done.
So PL, where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Best place to find me is on Twitter at PL Stuart Writes. Website's www.plstuart.com. Less frequently on Facebook and Instagram, but as well it's at PL Stuart Writes. My preferred social media platform is Twitter. My DMs are open if to talk about writing, or if you have inquiries about what I write about, or you just want to talk about writing and fantasy. I love engaging with people and making new friends and connections. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm Goodreads as well. I'm on Goodreads a lot. So yeah, and of course, I should always need to plug and remind people that Steve and I are both honored members of the amazing Before We Go blog, led by the incredible Beth Tabler. And thank you, Beth, for all you do. And shout out to Beth and all other amazing bloggers at Before We Go blog, and my co-editor. I'm an assistant editor with Before We Go blog, and my assistant editor Brianna Snyder, and everybody involved with Before We Go blog. Thank you for also doing such great work and getting the word out there about creatives and their work. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
And Taylor, was the best place to find you?
Honestly, YouTube. So at Maed Between the Pages, which you can see below here. I am on Twitter, not as frequently as I had planned to at the beginning, but DMs, as PL said, they are open. So if someone would like to send me a message, that I'm open to that. But YouTube is definitely the platform to find me. I really enjoy engaging with people in the comments. It's like the bread and butter of what I do, and I love it. So also, I haven't mentioned before in our lives, but I do have a business email of the same name, Maed Between the Pages @gmail.com. So if there are indie writers or, people who want to have a crack, have me have a crack at their art, their work, or their book, you can send me a message there. And that is also linked on my YouTube channel. So if you go there, go to the About tab, it is in my business inquiries area. So I have had, thanks to Zamil as well, sharing my review, I have had people reach out to me there. So that is also open. And yeah, I think that's probably the best.
And Lana, do you want to tell us about the Indie Accords? Those are coming up, right?
Yes, I'm so excited. Okay, so this July we are doing round 2 of the Indie Accords, which is essentially a month-long readathon where we read nothing but indie and self-published books. So it's just a celebration of them. There is a bingo prompt, a bingo board of 9 prompts. One of them is a free one. Oh, actually, one of them is like to leave a review. Obviously, we want you to leave a review for every book that you read. But it's team-based. It's a little different from last year. So we have your literary, historical fiction, contemporary poetry team. Then you have your romance team. You have the fantasy sci-fi team. And then you have the horror thriller team, mystery team, which Steve has kindly accepted and said that he will be a part of the horror and thriller team, which I'm super excited about. So yeah, that's happening starting the 1st of July in whichever time zone you are in, just to make life easier. There will be 2 $30 gift vouchers up for grabs as well. And yeah, I'm just really excited. But yeah, the bingo prompts, I've written them all out, so I'm really excited to see what everyone thinks about them and read some awesome indie.
I'm going to be promoting the shit out of that. I'm so excited.
Oh wow, Lana, thank you so much. That is amazing. Oh wow, thank you so much for doing that for the indie community. That's incredible. And thank you, Steve, for that's awesome.
How could I say no to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of my favorite time of the year. So I plan everything from probably about March onward for the Indie Accords, building up to it. So yeah.
Awesome. Where can people find more information about that, Lana, in the meantime? Do you have a place where people can go and look into it and see how it's structured and everything?
On Thursday I'll actually be writing up the blog post.
Cool.
And I'll leave a link to it in my little link tree thing. You can find me on Twitter at law_lullabies. And Laura is LOR, like law. and the same on Instagram, and it's Law and Lullabies on YouTube. And I think that's it. I also have a business email, which is lawandlullabies@gmail.com, which you can also find me there.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. So it's always great when we were able to get together. We're all over. It's so cool that we can just do this kind of thing. We're all over the planet. It's neat that we can do this. So thanks everyone who came by to chat with us and interact with us in the chat. And of course, thanks to everyone for showing up, and of course Pretzel for making an appearance as well.
That's why his name is Pretzel, because he pretzels himself. He always grabs himself. So you're witnessing the name currently.
Awesome.
Thanks everybody. We'll see you actually tonight at 7 p.m.
Yes.
For the next episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Angela Board and Krista Matar, two SBFBO finalists. Don't miss it. Fantastic. They write Legacy of the Brightwash. Yes, the author of Legacy of the Brightwash, which I think you're currently reading, Taylor. Yeah, she's going to be on tonight. And Angela Board, fantastic fantasy romance.
Can I finish in time? That's the question. I'm excited.
I love that. Crystal, I was watching on the con that they did recently, and she described Legacy of the Brightwash as grimdark romance. I loved that.
I have to say that's my book of the year, the previous year, and many people's. It is just phenomenal. So highly recommended read. And Angela Board's Fortune Fool, again, highly recommended read. Awesome. So Steve and I are pretty jazzed about that later. So.
I'm jazzed about that. I think I'll be at work when it goes though. But just can you tell them that Lana is a fangirl of both of them, and I bought their Kickstarter. They're doing Alchemy of Sorrow.
Yes, the Alchemy of Sorrow. Yeah, that's big. That's what I was talking about. Yeah, that's big. So we will tell them. We'll pass it on.
What time is it again? 7 p.m.
Yes,
EST?
It's in 11 hours.
6 a.m. 6 a.m. I'll do my best.
Steve and I are just gonna.
5, I'll do my best.
Steve and I are just gonna sleep this. We're just sleeping this weekend between podcasts. That's all it is. Like
fun weekend.
So much respect. Oh my god.
It's been so much fun.
Yeah.
Well, put 2 fangirl votes in there if I can't make it.
We will absolutely.
Cool. Thanks everybody. We'll see you next time. See you tonight.
See you next time. Okay. Bye now.